rock and roll, you know how we go. Every day marching. 4 to 5 others, which is big as nurses, and it seems that they got a little bit of that work here done, and that's just something which I gotta salute the public workers, and they got a little bit of this good done. Look at those beautiful flowers there. And I gotta salute less potholes, smells good. For the public workers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the plumbers, the electricians, I always gotta sing that rock and roll for them, and that is always something which I gotta say in the sun. And gotta traverse, smells good. Smell some of that good stuff, and we're gonna go a little bit towards the sun and then circumvent roundabout it. Turn your head left and right. Can I pass? Yes, I can. Pass by here. They got a little bit of the arbeit, and it's always good. So I see this machine right here. This is what I wanted to try. A lot of beautiful machines. You got some work machines, and always rock and roll for the public workers. I'm gonna go to the mountain for the public workers. They do a lot of good work, and yeah, it's a lot of arbeit. I love these machines, they're so nice, and this one's really cool. I love this big machines, and look at that. Is it made in Canada? I don't know, I guess so, but maybe it's made in Canada, you know. That's a lot of public work here. Somebody gotta sing that rock and roll for the public workers. I always like seeing all the work that's being done, and all this work, that is constantly for the North American Empire. Gotta salute the public workers. They got to do that work. Yeah, it's always fun, Always fun to get it on the go, and we see the work being done, and I just gotta be careful because now there's children coming on the hop, so I'm gonna take a distance. Or they're turning over there, but this machine is a beauty. Let's see where it's made in. Public workers, they got a little bit of that machines working, and that's always something which is exciting to see. All the work underneath across North America. Imagine all the canals, the sewers which were built, and all that, all the work which is underneath. It's something we don't think about it every day, but it of course enables us to have clean water, cleaner electricity, and it's something which you got to think about more and more, underneath. There's tons and tons of aqueducts, which of course you can see one there, aqueducts there, and gotta salute a little bit of boys and girls in blue. Ain't nobody perfect, that includes that me and you as I sing that rock and roll for the North American Collective, the security forces. Always gotta sing that rock and roll for the brothers and sisters who work and things that arbeit, and for my brothers and sisters who do their criminal rehabilitation, We gotta get that Imperial Canada, North America, Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act to consequently, of course, put a little bit of that work, to get it on the work with that. And I'm all about work, but my brain is different because of Asperger's, so I see the world differently. I'm a joyous, content Asperger. I'm just financially stressed, and that is just my stress right now, It is financial. Besides financial stress, I'm pretty good, and I always love when I go to the mountain. I was a bit moody today, My anonymous friend, I'm going to bless her with level 11 protection, from the sun and the star, level 11 protection, because, I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, I lived it, I was attacked by surprise, but it's always important to channel, channel and sublimate the aggression. That's why we need mass infrastructure works. And just because I want to finalize the theory and the philosophy, of course, of all the public works, which is underneath, here. So underneath Montreal, you see the sewers. There's aqueducts and canals and systems that enable us to have the water, the potable water. So for us to drink, for us to drink the water in our tap water, which is kind of safe, although I got filters. Thank you, my anonymous friend. I contributed a bit financially to the filters, but it's something which, by consequently, you gotta keep in mind that all this civilization is a privilege, and gotta get on that rock and roll. And all the sewers and the canals here, Montreal is a big island metropolis, right? But it's a whole big system which was built over decades, and all the pipes underneath for us to bring the water to the tap water. It's so much work that has been done for decades and decades and decades in the 20th and 21st century as well, So something as a philosopher, as an artist, I always meditate and think about, because sometimes we take it for granted, but I always, of course, replicate. And as I salute the public transit workers, that this arbeit, this work has generated over decades and decades and decades, and conscientiously we don't really think about it that often, you know, but it's part of course, my thesis back in 2023, the privilege of civilization. So if you think about all the underground work for us to have the clean running water, just open the tap water, it's a lot of work. So all that work, of course, which has been done, we now, of course, take the, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love it, love it, love it. Oh yeah, definitely, I'm definitely gonna take this. Oh, this is so nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The other I'm gonna leave for somebody else. Somebody else can take those greens, but I'm gonna take this one. What's in here? Got some little, oh, this was frozen. I guess I'm gonna take these ones as well and leave the others. I'm gonna leave the cucumber. Leave the cucumber, or maybe I should take what's in here. I guess the cucumber for a salad when I come, and the leftovers I'm gonna leave for somebody else. There's a bit of a food waste, but because I'm gonna share with my friend, you know, anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money. So these are also gonna have of watermelon. I guess we're gonna have a geopolitics of watermelon. I don't know how much it weighs, but you gotta be grateful for it. See. You know, and that is just something which we have to do, you know, to integrate and appellate, and of course gonna put it in the backpack. And that is just something, you know, which happens to be here where we are involved, you know. It's food security. You got to think about the truckers and, you know, all those involved in food security. And until the mountain, we're gonna tie the hair until the mountain, you know. So that is what it is. And just when we get to the mountain, then I guess we can let it loose, you know. So I'm trying to get as much sun as I can, so I'm trying to strategize the best way for me to go to the mountain, I guess, by the side there, and then clock it in, and we're gonna let the main out when we go. So yeah, there we go. So happy, content. And you know, this backpack carries those red gloves. I'm gonna show them off. Thank you to my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money. And since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump with these gloves. It's a Dragon versus Trump event. Ooh, I got a little bit of that. When I get back, I gotta clean this. Ooh, it's a bit dirty. I just noticed that it's a bit dirty, so I gotta clean it. And yeah, when I get back home, I'm gonna clean the gloves also. Why? Because of the food, I guess. So I guess I saw it, so I noticed it. So this has to be cleaned. This has to be clean when I get back. Now, of course, we're gonna add. I'm gonna add this first. So grateful for this. I love this. Thank you to those. This is also a nice one, you know. Although it's a bit frozen, I don't think it's gonna be bad. I'm gonna have to eat it right away. These are frozen also, so this is gonna be my treat tonight with some bread when I come back. This is all gonna head to the mountain, and that is what we're gonna do here, you know. And that's where we're gonna rock and roll, you know, all the way to the top. While carrying this, now I added a little bit of weight, so now the weight's, yeah, about 44 maybe plus pounds. I guess the watermelon is more than like 11 pounds, not kilos, pounds. So yeah, let's rock and roll. Can I see it? Oh yeah, definitely adds the increase of annee. And this I like. And this is rainbow, just like yours truly is not just part of the neurodivergent community, but of the rainbow community. So that is something which, hey, thank you. I wish I could fill it up, that fridge, maybe one day, you know, sooner than later. And of course, I gotta contribute by cleaning it myself because it's a common fridge donation. And hey, I'm so happy for that watermelon. Fudge, yeah, watermelon time. Well, I guess not until I get back. And tomorrow probably gonna split 50-50 with my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money. And, you know, hear how we are and how we go on these journeys to the mountain and back, sometimes to the river. Today's the 3rd of September, and although my only stress now is financial, I'm just financially stressed. Besides financial stress, I'm pretty good in my artistic life and my, of course, geopolitics. That's where my kingdom, domain, and empire is, really, and that's my special interest, aka obsessive interest, as somebody who lives with Asperger's. And back to finalize on the aqueducts, all the aqueducts that were underneath. You know, for us to have clean, zero pollution, for us to have water and to have tap water to drink, to cook, cooking also, right? We have that water. And of course, to bathe, take showers, and all the activities which we do the dishes, you know. It's water, we don't have to go to take it to the river, we have access to it, and that is both for pretty much everybody across the board. It's kind of a standard, and of course we gotta go in on the do, and we have this privilege of civilization, which is exactly having tap water, for example, can be a privilege of civilization, because we don't have to go to the river or to the lake to get it, and that is just something which you have to do. And look at these beautiful yellow flowers. I love yellow. Feel the yellow here, just quadruples my smile, and long flowers on the way, and of course the Imperial Republic rising with the 63 always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. And you know, I'm not just a philosopher, artist, athlete, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. I'm also a mystic. I know my reincarnation, some of them more than others, and of course some of them more than others. But I was born in the United States 3 times post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man, and across times I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, one woman, a man, woman, a man, woman, a man, and now that I'm 50-50, you know, I'm androgynous, pansexual, part of the rainbow community, but I'm a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist, I guess a Democratic Republican, Republican Democrat, you know, 50-50, and for the 21st century. But that has to be understood that when I say the universal revolutionary centrist, and universal revolutionary centrism is North American centric, and of course Democratic Republicanism or Republican democracy is based on my philosophies, you know, on my trinity of theories, you know, to get it on the go. Gotta watch the car there, because sometimes the brakes malfunction, you know. The brakes malfunction, and that it is what it is with that. So being that the brake, the brakes malfunctions, the brake can you know, the brakes malfunction sometimes. So that's why you gotta turn your heads left and right constantly. And now that I'm in the public, I have myself added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which I don't have. If I would have stayed home, I would have not had the same obligations, duties, responsibilities as I do have them now, you know. As I do have them now, you know. As I do have them now. So that is, of course, what it is in the theorizing protocols of whatever the case may be, and whatever the things which we have, of course, endeavors to be with the civilizational complex of which we are now, you know, to get, of course, in the interactions where we are now, to be concomitant of all the adverse relations which we have, of course, in the situational context of living with Asperger's, that we have less, you know, we're less able, of course, in the situational projects, of course, where we are, you know, to do, of course, all the things which we do, you know, to get on the things which we do, you know. It's something which gonna turn here, you know, and that is something which we have, you know, to get doing on that, you know. And there's something where we got on the circumstantial project, of course, that we got those little beautiful yellow flowers in the corner, which I love, which quadruple my smile. And here we are, you know, endeavoring to go to my second home and discussing indeed the fact that we are in the public now, and in the public myself as an individual sovereign citizen who has this considered by some a disability. Yes, we're less able in certain circumstances, social circumstances. Usually Aspies, we lack certain social, you know, certain social dynamics, you know. We lack certain social dynamics. Certain social dynamics we lack. I mean, not the dynamics necessarily, but the understanding of social unwritten rules and protocols can be more difficult for Aspies, right? They can be more difficult for Aspies. That is where most of the problem can arise for Aspies. The social dynamics. And I'm just gonna go on the other side to cross the street prudently and be mindful and discuss a little bit about Asperger's, because it's part of who I am. You know that I'm unofficially diagnosed, but I was diagnosed by several individuals with HFA, high functioning autism, and also known as Asperger's, you know, also known as Asperger's. Aspie being that I'm an Aspie, you know. Asperger's is a neurological mental divergent condition, not a mental illness, not a disease. I'm not a disease. It's not a disease. I know I got 6 seconds. I guess I'm gonna cross the street. Better speed it up, you know. Super important to speed it up sometimes, just to get it on time, dear. Cross the street safely, because sometimes they just clock it in, you know. So that is the Asperger's is not a mental illness, right? It's not an illness. It is just a neurodivergence. And for example, oh, beautiful sky, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm just gonna zigzag it to the mountain and I guess to the top, and then we're gonna clock it in a verse, because I want to get as much sun as I can. Because I love the SUN, and I left late because there were so many geopolitical events that I was a bit all over the place. You know, there were so many, and that's what I do. I do geopolitical theoretical analysis, rock and roll, sports and fitness on a daily basis, you know. So on a daily basis, that is something which, of course, we have on the congruent side of where we are now to, of course, appellate and, of course, to integrate all our civilizational complexes as individual sovereign citizens, and of course individual sovereign citizens where we are, of course, where we integrate all our dynamics in the composition, where we, of course, are involved in the manners where we have to express ourselves and where we have to exercise our freedom, liberty, in concordiate and in security with the added obligations, duties, and responsibility of living in the public. You know, which I guess public hygiene and public safety, they're part of it, you know, and it's not always easy for us to fully acquiesce or fully work by those working. Sometimes we got those inner dynamics where we have, of course, those inner dynamics where we are now in the solutional aspects, of course, where we are, that we are, of course, different. I am speaking myself as an individual sovereign citizen. My difference is, of course, due to this HFA, high functioning autism, also known as Asperger's, you know, also known as Asperger's. So this HFA Asperger's is, of course, the constitutional awareness, of course, where we are now interjecting that we have to discuss it in a manner which is going to be productive in building bridges, right? So now we're going to focus on Asperger's autism, HFA, and of course to watch the street here. I cross the street, gotta watch the street, and gonna go look at those beauties there. Sometimes the brakes malfunctions, the brake malfunction, and you gotta turn, you know, you gotta turn on the go. So these are beauties here. This is what I love. This is a nice garden. It's your garden?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were smiling because I just love it. Like, you wish, eh?
It's a nice garden.
Yeah, just the colors there just blend in so nicely. Bye-bye. Like you. Likewise. So yeah, I thought it was my fellow citizens with the log, but those are super nice there. See? Wow, those are nice garden. I love colors like that with yellow flowers. It's just something that I really love a lot. So it always brings me some joy when I see yellow flowers like these ones as well. Just gorgeous. Guess it's part of the same, eh? Wow. Love your garden. My fellow citizen said, I wish. So now just gonna salute the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, and plumbers, electricians, the doctors, the welders, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those, of course, involved in the public works now, and my brothers and sisters across the collective, you know. We have these added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, and this has to be filled because a child might trip on this if it jogs, if it's jogging. See, it's about an 11 like my shoes, tiny feet, tiny hands, but this has to be filled. So we got a lot of work across the 63, always the 10, the 50, and the 3. And see this one here, somebody can trip, so that's a bit public safety, because if it runs or the bike, this has to be filled there. See, my assessment, I guess, because I go on the public, and this is the island of the Hawk, and we got a lot of work to do. I'm all about work, but paradoxically, or friends with benefits, paradoxically, just gonna assess, and maybe I should go a little bit by this side, take a few steps, like that, take a few steps and cross safely, you know, because now, just for example, the obligation is kind of to stay on the right side, right? Be just like the cars, and you drive on the right. And now, just like me, I'm on the right side. So I gotta drive. Well, I'm not driving, I'm marching, but I gotta just stay on the right side. So that's also when there's children involved, just to think about the children, you know, on the go with that. And that is something which, of course, I have to be understanding about. That, of course, when somebody's carrying a carriage and with children, I always try to take a few steps and do my, because me, I'm more marching steps, and now that I have the backpack, you know, it's an added, takes added space in terms of the width no broad shoulders, and that is just the width where we are and where we engage ourselves to be, and where we are, of course, in the domains where we are to get, of course, all the relations where we are now to just circumvent, and of course to be exposed to these responsibilities, duties, and obligations. It's responsibilities, duties, and obligations which are of course in the concordiate where we are sufficient to be, for example, to wait for my auntie if she's gonna go there on the side. And I thought maybe, that's why I slowed down, because I said maybe auntie's gonna go here, you know. I thought maybe auntie is gonna go there, but it's not. So that's just an assessment, you know. So it's always assessing in the march, and for years and years and years I've been doing it, and something which of course we have to acquiesce ourselves and to make sure that we are in the domains, in this public domain, right? Because I'm no longer in my private quarters in the underground room house and temple where I did hours and hours and hours of geopolitical revision study and revision with my geopolitical work, which I've been doing for years and years and years, and in many a times on the go, and that is just something what we have to do, you know. So now back to Asperger's. I'm just going to discuss it a bit. I don't want to go too much in depth about Asperger's, but I have to discuss it, and I guess I can discuss it right after we pass this beautiful garden. And just going to salute the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, and all those, of course, involved in the production, distribution of food. Got to think about the firefighters, the truckers, the bakers, the nurses, and I love this one. See these? I don't know what they're called, but I just love them. They're bright burgundy red. See, they're kind of burgundy red, and they're just so nice. I just love them a lot. Here, this garden is totally gorgeous. Totally gorgeous, the garden, of course, here. Now it's, of course, going towards the ending of the summer, so I guess some of those flowers are retreating into the deep earth, but of course you can see there's still so much color, so much beauty here until I guess a few more weeks of summer. But those yellow ones in the mixture with those white ones there is something which of course we have to analyze in the concreteness sense, of course, of being of the dynamics where we are, of course, involved now for the beautification of the public. And in this public sphere we have added beautification to do, and of course these yellow here, you know, these yellow here are of course abundant. So we love that abundance, although myself, you know, am rich in geopolitics, rock and roll, fitness, and dancing is my favorite sport, and got those trillions of kisses by which I'm laying the foundations for the, hey, look at those beautiful black. What are those beautiful black? I never seen that. Beautiful black. Beautiful, are those black tomatoes? I don't think I ever saw that. Are those black tomatoes? I don't think I ever saw that. If they are, it seems to be related to that. See? Beautiful black tomatoes. I wonder if they are. It seems to be, because those are red tomatoes and those are black tomatoes. Do you know if those are black tomatoes there? I never seen anything like that. See?
Looks like a tomato plant.
Wow, I never seen.
But the leaves are identical, huh?
I was making the same notification that the leaves are identical to the red tomatoes, but I wasn't able.
For that, eh? To identify.
Oh, my phone is so full. I think
I
absolutely.
don't have it, but
Yeah.
take a picture. You should be able to identify it online.
Yeah. Wow. Eh?
Yeah.
Bye. Have a nice day. So look at that. Wow, beautiful black olives. Not olives, but they look like olives, but I think they are black tomatoes. Wow, I never seen anything like that before. Look at that. Do you know if those are black tomatoes? I never seen anything like that before.
I don't speak English.
Français?
No, Farsi.
No, je parle pas Farsi, no. I don't speak the Farsi. I know that's like Persian from Iran, but have a nice day, madam. I just ate the black tomatoes. They look like the black, see? And they're beautiful. But I don't know if they're tomatoes to eat. I never seen that before. I never seen anything like that. Have you seen anything like that?
I don't.
Wow. Have a nice day. Wow, I was wondering, you know, I was wondering if the tomatoes are the black tomatoes compared to the red tomatoes, you know. That is just something which we have, of course, to do. So, of course, in all the appellations, it might be that they're black tomatoes. But myself, wow, those are cuties. I wonder, and quite beautiful, eh? Beautiful black tomatoes. I wonder if they're edible. And I really, something that I never tried. Maybe it's a genetic, I'm gonna say genetic works, mutation, no, not really. So Asperger's, back to Asperger's, yes, we have, our brains are mutated, eh? There's the microscopic level, is the visions, the mutations are not visible at the outside of the exterior brain. So then you cannot see outside, they're not protruding outside, they're not bulging out, of course, they're not bulging out, of course. So they're not bulging, of course, outside of the cranium, inside of the matter. Where we have, of course, the cranium to be, of course, in the solution, of course, where we are, in the prepositions where we can show these mutations. So these happen at the interior level. At the interior level. At the interior level. These happen at the interior level. So these are microscopic, tiny fractions, like the tiny mutations, of course, something where we are. And of course, these are, of course, the tiny mutations where we are now. So these tiny mutations are, of course, happening at the micro level, you know, the micro level. At the micro level, you know, at the micro level. So these are mutations at the micro level. They're not protruding outside of the brain. You cannot visibly see them, you know. They're at the nano level. There's at the nano level. So those are at the nano level mutations. So those, of course, are apparent in all the possibilities where we are, of course, now. Interjection to be, of course, of the domain where we are to get, of course, the calculations and the explanation, and of course the manifestations of ASPE characteristics and traits, you know, the characteristics and traits, the characteristics and traits of Asperger's, which is not an illness, it's not a mental illness, and it's not a disease, it's not a disease. Because I remember when I was working, somebody said, oh, you know, that's a disease. They were whispering among themselves, and I overheard it, and I said, no, it's not a disease. I didn't interject in there. I guess you call it gossip, something which we Aspies kind of, because of how we view the world and how we process social information, we see the world differently, you know, we see the world differently. So this is how we see the world in a different manner, and of course it is consequential that we see the world differently, and this difference makes us also open to certain vulnerabilities, such as miscomprehensions and misalignment sometimes in the social sphere, in the way we communicate, you know, in the way we communicate, and of course in the way we communicate our social ways, you know, our social ways, we're different, right? We communicate, express ourselves in a different manner, and certain things our brain processes differently, and thus we have more difficulties with social interaction and non-written rules. And for example, it could be personal space, you know, hey, that's nice. Personal space, you know. Personal space, you know. These are nice and beautiful. Look at that. Wow, these are so nice. I like that. How they're planted in there. So, of course, sometimes, for example, personal space. You're supposed to keep a few meters, 2 meters, 4 yards personal space, you know. 4 yards or whatever the yards, the yardage in meters, they differ, you know. They're not the same units of measurements. But, of course, it is the point is that an Aspie might get so close. So these are the manifestations of Asperger's, people with HFA, Aspie traits. So we might get so close, you know. We might get so close to people when we converse. Well, we might get so close, you know. We might get very close in conversation. Oh, I dropped the look. So we might get close to 2 inches, 4 inches. That the person might feel a bit uncomfortable. You know, might feel intimidated, might feel less secure, might feel intimidated and have less security and whatever have you. Things of that nature can be felt by the neurotypical. vis-a-vis us, because Aspies were neurodivergent, and there's half of Aspies who are not even diagnosed officially. Only half of the population of Aspies are diagnosed. Me, I'm part of the other half unofficially, but I've been diagnosed, of course, by several individuals, of course, something which we got, of course, where I have to be diagnosed, on the parallel side of things where we are. And there's the flag spotted, There's the flag spotted there. When I flag the spot, flag is spotted. I gotta show mine, because I got tatted up there. I don't know when it was tatted up. I have no idea, probably decades ago, because my memory prior to spring 2014 goes a blackout. I don't know if I was a junkie before spring 2014, if I did lots of drugs, if I did lots of drug consumption, if I did lots of drugs, or consumption of drugs, or if I did. That's beautiful. I just can't remember, but memory loss, retrograde amnesia does not affect, of course. That's a beauty. Retrograde amnesia, isn't that gorgeous? Retrograde amnesia array does not affect memory such as knowledge and skills, linguistic skills, mathematical skills, or such skills. It's just personal memory I have trouble remembering. I used to live in a very small, moldy place, a few kilometers from here. Underground basement, small, moldy underground basement. Very small underground moldy basement, and it was like a tight prison cell. I guess I served my time. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street, even if this is a one-way. Turn your heads left and right. And of course, due to that factor and the factorial, of course, that we are now involved in the communication on this online work which I'm doing now, is something which we got the quantification of, where we are, of course, something where we are part of this neurodivergent community. Several people have unofficially diagnosed me, of course, with Asperger's, and of course Asperger's is something which I have to live with, because you have one to we cannot medicate Asperger's. It's not a disease. We can only work on the characteristics and work on the traits vis-a-vis that we need to build the bridges with neurotypicals. And I don't have antagonistic, resentful feelings towards you, the majority, who are neurotypicals. I don't have antagonistic feelings. I don't have negative feelings or adverse or hostile vis-a-vis you, the 99%. So Aspies officially we stand at 0.44%. Only 0.44%. Although only half are diagnosed, that means that the other half are undiagnosed. Just gonna turn my head left and right. So that means that even with the diagnosis, if there would have been, of course, official diagnosis, that means that there would have been, of course, 0.88. That means that there would have been, of course, 1%, close to 1%. So not even close, actually. So less than 1%, less than 1%. And it's something, of course, which we have, of course, to integrate in all the dynamics where we have, So this is, of course, the Aspiness, and of course, my Aspiness vis-a-vis somebody's Aspiness is, of course, on the side of the things where we are, of course, consequently, and of course, in the domain where we are, in the consequential, of course, appellation of all the domains where we are, of course, different, and where we have, of course, something conclusion, or to have a conclusion made, is that just those characteristics and traits we have to work on. We have to work on, something where we are in the adverse relationship, where we are in the side of the preposition where we are now, So that is something where we have to be concomitantly, and of course, that's just where we are, and you are. Well, we are, of course, in the concomitantly position, of course, where we are on the side of the things, where we are involved to build those bridges. So back to my memory, it's 2014, spring 2014. So about March, April 2014. Before that, my life remains a mystery. I have a high school diploma, tats, I don't know. So I got some info about this tat. Supposedly I got it in New York. And I got, because I had kept journals, I don't have a birth certificate. I lived where I am now. Supposedly I thought it was 9 years, but it's summer 2015 when I moved, right before Trudeau got elected. Trudeau's reign was about 10 years, and now we're in difficult times. And sometimes memory comes back, and I remember I was attacked by surprise. I survived a vicious surprise attack, I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was hit in the head a few times. I fell, hit my head on the concrete, and had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. You know, right arm, right shoulder dislocated. Dislocated right arm and shoulder, and was bloodied up, was bloodied up, was bloodied up, was bloodied up, was bloodied up. Right. I was bloodied up, and that is, of course, just whatever the event was, and I survived that vicious surprise attack. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. I gave myself a deadline until next week to go retrieve the archives. So I might even go tomorrow, if not Tuesday. I gotta do a big cleaning, you know, a big cleaning before summer. I gotta do a big cleaning before summer, and that is something which, of course, we have to apply and integrate where we are now. But that aside, I don't know if I did drugs, hard drugs. I don't do drugs. And matter of fact, here we legalized cannabis in 2019, eh? Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And the last time I did was a few months ago, and I still have I bought about 3.5 years ago. Almost 4 years ago last. I purchased regularly. Not regular, I don't purchase regular. I do not consume drugs. I purchased, and I still even have leftovers from that time. So that is a long time ago. I still have a rolled up joint. I think I rolled it 3.5 years ago. I don't even know if it's still good. I still have it. That's a long time ago. Well, I guess during COVID, you know, I wanted to try the legal cannabis. So again, I don't do drugs, but I don't know if I did before 2014. Sometimes alcoholism and consuming alcohol for a long duration of time. When you're an alcoholic, sometimes you get rid of booze, and I don't know if maybe I stopped drinking and doing drugs when I moved there. So maybe I was a junkie and an alcoholic, and I just lost memory, or by trauma, you know, PTSD. Whatever case may be, I'm joyous now, live with my scars, you know, and I was depressed and suicidal, you know. So that was, of course, the things where we are, of course, involved now to get it on the go. So I was depressed and suicidal. Unfortunately, this happens with people with Asperger's. We have 9 times, so the depression or suicidal rate for Aspies is 9 times higher. Parallelly, the high unemployment rate. So now we're gonna go back to Aspie. Whatever my life was, I got the high school diploma from a long time ago, 2003. So I graduated high school. I don't have a university diploma, so I graduated high school though. I have a high school diploma. I have some other documents, and supposedly I wanted to go, because I have a reference letter. Supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, dude. Kingston Military College. Supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College. You know, supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, so I guess geopolitics was always, in some way, shape, or form, part of who I am now, and all my work, independent work, which I take a lot of pride in, so, which I'm going to go into in a bit. Just going to take 4 more minutes to finalize the discussion on Asperger's. So again, it's not an illness, it's not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition which makes us weird in certain circumstances, odd, bizarre, and strange. So these strange, bizarre, odd characteristics can, of course, influence, of course, all our discussions, and can, of course, get us, of course, for the limitation, of course, of where we are, to place certain barriers, obstacles to long-term employment, for example, or long-term friendships, because of those traits, those characteristics. And we have to state that Asperger's is not a disease, and we have to state firmly that Asperger's, people who have Asperger's, also known as HFA, Aspies, we're not evil, we're not bad, it's not negative, it's not malicious, right? So that's where we have to also draw the line, kind of in the side, because it's not a bad, negative event. Yes, there's difficulties in certain social interactions, social circumstances of a social nature, but it's not bad, evil, or negative, or malicious. That's where we have to kind of draw the line, you know. That's where we have to draw the line. Beautiful sun is shining strongly. Today is 27. So that's where we have to draw the line. Here's one way, but in theory they can also make the mistake and enter, right? So that's where we have to draw the line. That is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's not an illness. It's not a disease. And of course, it cannot be medicated, you know? It cannot be medicated. It cannot be medicated. So you cannot medicate that. It cannot be medicated. So that's where we have to draw, of course, the line. That's where we have to draw the line, you know, to get it on the go. And that's just something what we have to do, you know. That's just something what we have to do. That's where we have, of course, to draw the line consequently. To, of course, say that it is not an illness, it is not a disease, and we gotta turn your heads left or right, you know. Turn your heads left or right and cross the street safely. So that is something which we have to co-equivocally say that it's not a disease, you know. So that is something which we have, of course, to do together to affirm it. It's not a disease. It's not an illness. It's not a disease, it's not an illness, and it's not negative. It's not a disease, it's not a disease. It's not negative, it's not bad, it's not malicious, it's not evil. So now that we established that, and that has to be kind of the line in the sand, you know, due to that's just what it is. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. Makes us predisposed to those special interests. And those special interests preoccupy, of course, most of our daily lives and activities on a daily basis where we are involved with now. And that gives me some hope, you know. I see people holding hands, and that's always hope. That's hope for the free world. And that is something which we gotta co-equivalently be on the side of the things where we are, you know. On the life-affirming values, and all these life-affirming values are, of course, ours to take and withhold, and to take the position around Asperger's. That is, of course, the position where, of course, we have the characteristics where we are now involved in discussing Asperger's and what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. And of course, that aspiness is, of course, something which we have to do, and we have, of course, to evaluate, and we have, of course, to work on the characteristics and the traits. So those characteristics and traits are, of course, related to us being involved in all the situational complexes of where we are now as a dynamic group, because Aspies, we can be pretty dynamic, you know. So that dynamism can come, of course, in many ways. That dynamism can come in many ways. And of course, that dynamism is related to our special interests. And these special interests, of course, preoccupy us with intensity and super focus. Super focus and intensity, and of course the super focus and intensity can come out of those special interests where, of course, we are involved in all the manner where we are now to discuss geopolitics before formally closing, of course, the chapter on Asperger's. So that is just the situation where we are now. Here you got to be careful when you cross the street, because sometimes they come fast by the corner, and they cut the corner fast, and they go to the stop there. So I know this corner. This is my city, my island. And I gotta salute the public garbage collectors, and that is just something what I gotta salute myself to be. All the garbage collectors. Gotta get that big trucks, and takes that brains and muscle. Thank you for the sanitation work. I always admire. See how we gotta build more. We really need to make a great evaluation to build, to mass invest in the mass infrastructure for sanitation, you know, something that we have to do, and we have, of course, to appellate, and we have to do it, because you saw how our machines for sanitation, and this is across the 63, some of them are from the 70s, So some of them have in need of renewal and to build new ones. So Asperger's, we have three main problems which are facing us. Three main problems which are facing Asperger's, people with autism, HFA, Asperger's in particular, which has merged with the autism spectrum, right? So the three main problems are lack of friends. I have the solution: don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And that is it, you know. Friends with benefits only, you're black, you're white, you know, you want to play a rainbow. You know, I do that good loving black, white, or rainbow, you know. Gonna do that black, white, or rainbow, but you gotta be 18, you know. You gotta be 18, otherwise, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only, pledge your allegiance, you know. Support the dream. The dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally a dream for a public private punishment, of course, for the Imperial Republican fusion of the 10, the 50, and the 3, and consequently the creation of the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdoms, Dragon Army, aka Imperial SSD Legion, and the dancing goddess army, the DGA, of course, to be for environmental education and protection and action. So that is just something which we have to do together. We have to co-equivalent now to discuss these problems which ASPIs have. So yeah, we have three main problems, but those problems, there are solutions to them. Of course, the high depression and suicidal rate. So it's 9 times higher, and I was depressed and suicidal as I go now crossing in my own neighborhood. Nothing that I will to go back to, but I was depressed and suicidal, you know. So I was depressed, I was suicidal for a few years, I guess summer 2014, summer 2017. What got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, that got me out of depression. So that made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And of course, crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And of course, back ever since then, when I crossed Canada coast to coast, that makes me think of a good surveillance there. We have to build the Imperial Citizen Public Safety and Sanitation and Wellness Total Surveillance Act. And we have to put, of course, items like that across all the 63 in all cities, and we have to use companies, public-private partnership, of course, to have that monitoring, and I'm going to get into it soon, but of course, that is, of course, necessary. I'm curious when I go retrieve, if I go retrieve the archives, when was it, and I survived that vicious surprise attack, and I was put on some meds at the Jewish General Hospital. Because I used to live over there a few miles away. This is really where my new neighborhood begins and my old neighborhood begins. And of course, I was depressed and suicidal. Of course, being depressed and suicidal. What got me out of being depressed and suicidal was crossing Canada, coast to coast, coast to coast. So I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean in 2017. And that's when I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. That got me out of depression. I remember when I reached Banff, you know. When I reached Banff, of course, when I reached Banff was something when I, of course, got a cloud, and of course, that is something which I remember. When I reached Banff, I was like a paradise. And I said, wow, what is this place? And that event got me out of depression and being suicidal. And that is just something which, of course, we have to congruently, of course, intermittently be saying and be stating, of course, in all the manners where we are now. So crossing Canada coast to coast made me come out of my depression. So I crossed Canada coast to coast. I got out of depression. I started working out, training, exercising. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. That's the amount of weight that I lost consequently, you know. That's kind of the amount that I lost. Between 80 and 93 pounds, right? So I lost a lot of weight. I was depressed and suicidal. And for ASPIs, it's 9 times higher, the depression and suicidal rate, than, of course, for fellow neurotypicals. So, and of course, the high, of course, we have trouble maintaining friends, you know. We have trouble maintaining friends. So we have trouble maintaining friends, long-term friends is, of course, something which, of course, we have problems maintaining friends long-term friends. But now, for me, my solution is friends with benefits only, you know, friends with benefits only. That is just my solution, of course, in all the concomitant things where we have now, to get it on the go. And beautiful sun here. Gonna salute the firefighters and the truckers. Now my brain switches to geopolitics, and of course, just do a little meditation. Just do a little bit of meditation. How many truckers now across? So they're going south is that way. The border south is that way, and they're going north. How many truckers east, west, north, south across the 63 carrying bacon, cheese, lettuce, romaine lettuce, cheese lettuce, farm lettuce, all sorts of lettuce, all sorts of bacon, all sorts of bread, all sorts of food now across coast to coast, ocean to ocean. If you think about that, at this moment in time, there's so much lettuce, so much bread, so much bacon, so much food that is being traversed coast to coast, ocean to ocean, that of course it enables our civilizational continuance and survival, of course. So we gotta salute the truckers and give them some loving, you know. It's quite something. And you see the moon's there. The moon is over the 50 states, and now it's getting close to sunset and kind of looks to the north and south in a co-equivalent balanced manner, of course, that we are now together here. And we have to work together, just like the sun and the moon in balance. The sun and the moon in balance, we have to work together consequently for the 63. So now I'm just gonna turn a bit, gonna go in the sun. I wanna get some sun and just gonna go by the side, you know. Sometimes you just gotta go by the side of the mountain, and it's something which myself I have to meditate, because I love the sun and I don't mind storms. I don't mind storms or anything like that, and that is just something which I don't mind at all. Actually, storms, thunder, lightning is just not. The sun is so nice that it quadrupled my smile when the rays are hitting it, and you know, trying to absorb some of that good vitamin, and of course to get a little bit of that good vitamin with it. It's sometimes which we have, of course, to traverse, you know, all the situational complexes where we are now, you know, because we got to get some of that love. Hopefully, I just saw somebody holding hands, so that gives me hope, you know. It's not all about Wall Street, money, 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 and we know it. It's not all about the money. And here I entered my own neighborhood, but personally nothing that I will to go back to, nothing. And you know, I used to live over there in a small moldy place. It was underground, moldy. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have a bathtub now, and I didn't even have a bathtub. The kitchen was inside the room, you know. The kitchen was actually inside the room, so it was very tiny, small. It was like a prison cell. So I guess I served my time, you know. And I don't know how long I lived there, probably a few years. My memory prior to 2014 is just retrograde amnesia. And yeah, with Asperger's, you know, there's three main problems as we're gonna finalize on this. And friends, we have trouble maintaining, beautiful blue. We have trouble maintaining friends. I like the blue. We have trouble maintaining friends long term, and I made lots of friends, especially in the LGBTQ community, and of course we have trouble maintaining friends. So my solution now is the 3rd of September, so that we don't waste each other's times. We don't waste each other's times. Friends with benefits only, friends with benefits only from now on. Or pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. And consequently, the high depression and suicidal rates, and of course the unemployment. So those three, lack of friends. Thank you, my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books. One book, of course, on autism. 2 books on autism were gifted, and 1 book on specifically Asperger's, titled The Appreciating Asperger Syndrome, which I read a few times because it was a library loan, and it was, of course, loaned 4 times to me, and I learned about my vulnerabilities and Aspie vulnerabilities in general as it pertains to the communication and the levels which we have to navigate with fellow neurotypicals, and how we have, due to these trait characteristics, we have certain vulnerabilities. So I learned, of course, a lot about my own vulnerabilities. And of course that is the dictum where we have, of course, in the situational aspects of the dictum of where we are now, of course, to categorize in all the situational aspects where we have to build those bridges between Aspies and you, the 99%ers, the neurotypicals, which constitute the vast majority. So also unemployment is very high. The unemployment for Aspies stands at, this is totally unacceptable again, the unemployment for Aspies stands at 80+%. So more than 80%. 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, 80 out of 100, of course, have Asperger's. Correction, of Aspies, of people with Asperger's, with HFA, are unemployed. You realize the statistic is totally an abomination, and it's totally unacceptable that 80%, more than 4 out of 5, 10, 8 out of 10, of course, 80%, 80+% of Aspies are unemployed. So we have to make an effort, because the workspaces, the workplace, with all what it surrounds, is made for people who are neurotypicals, And of course, because of that, that is of course the neurotypicals where we are, of course, to get it and to get it on the go with that, and that is something which we do. So of course, that is just what we do, to get it on the go, and that is what all the things which we are, of course, now. So that is what, of course, they are, and that is how the workplaces are made and operated for the neurotypical population, right? In contrast to, of course, the neurodivergent for Aspies, and we don't get certain things because our brains processes information differently, and thus we have our vulnerabilities, and things such as being perhaps perceived as weird, awkward, strange, bizarre is due to this affluence and contingence of having and living with Asperger's, how we are vis-a-vis the neurotypical population, you, the 99%, but I don't have antagonistic sentiments, antagonistic feelings or negative feelings or sentiments hostile to the interest of the neurotypical population. It's just that we have to work together and we have to build those bridges. But sometimes the bridges can be small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. So within those 4 categories, of course, you have subcategories. You have subcategories within those 4. You can have different subcategories of bridges which have to be built. We have to build bridges. We have to, and it's a double effort. It requires a reciprocal effort, right? It's a reciprocal effort. It's not just the one way, and that is just what we have to do in the situation where we find ourselves today, and for tomorrow, of course, for the future, because it's unacceptable that 80%, 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10 Aspies are unemployed. I'm going to take a right turn here. So it's totally unacceptable, right, that so many Aspies are unemployed. That has to be accorded even by the neurotypical population. So it's maintaining jobs and employment that's difficult again. We just have to be told more directly, because we ourselves are more direct, right? Hey, beautiful white and red. So we ourselves can be sometimes we can answer directly, in a direct manner. We ourselves can be answering so in a direct manner. We can answer, or we can give a response that might seem offensive. Not because we mean to, by volition, by intention, malicious intentions. It's just because of our brains, They're different. So sometimes we just might say, the Aspies, there's a high saying that we have no filter, So even this concept of having no filter, I had to learn, and it took me years and years and years, because I've been diagnosed unofficially again by several individuals who have experience in the health care system and with health matters in the healthcare system generally. And of course, I didn't want to accept it for years and years and years, until about COVID, about 3.5 years ago, that I've accepted that I have Asperger's, because it's clear, well, the problems, the losing friends, the obstacles, the losing jobs and employment, and the isolation, and all the things that came with it, the high depression and suicidal rates, and all that, all those scars, and probably even the motive why I was viciously attacked by surprise years and years and years ago. So whatever the case may be, because some Aspies are prone to living abuse and being abused and all that. So there's a difference which can cause antagonistic feelings and be labeled as a disease, which is not. It's just we see the world differently, and paradoxically we have our strengths. We have our strengths, and we can contribute in a manner which is way above average in certain things that are called our special interests, So being that our special interest, also known as obsessive interest, is something which, of course, they're called obsessive and for others, but they're not really obsessive in that sense of a neurotypical sense, where there's a negative contribution and a negative attribution, but of course in the sense, of course, where we have those. Is that a cat? I see blurred. I was prescribed some glasses, but I think there's a cat in the window. Yeah, black and white cat. So those are the problems encountered by Aspies. You know, the lack of friends, the losing. I had many jobs myself. It's just I kept losing my jobs, and sometimes they last a few days, a few weeks, 4 months, 3 months, 4 months, 3 months, whatever the case may be. And that is just something which we have, of course, to apply it, of course, and of course be integrally in all aspects of our things. But we are the dynamics of the social interactions. Is of course something to do and something to be and something, of course, to apply in order translational. It's kind of living, it's kind of alien, you know. It's kind of like, think about an alien, or when you visit a foreign culture. In many ways, it kind of, that's how Aspies we are vis-a-vis you, the 99% of the population, eh? Because there is no medication again to treat. I have to always work on these characteristics, such as taking distance, which I do now. You know, I remember, hey, it's personal space. You're discussing with a neurotypical. You know, take a step back, or watch what you say. Or this, even the concept of having no filter is something which is not something which is not, having no filter again is something which is more of a neuro having no filter is something, of course, again, of a perspective, again, from the perspective of a neurotypical, right? Because I had to learn, of course, in a way, to build these bridges, and how it's because of quote unquote having no filter. This can cause losing jobs, losing employment, losing friends. But Aspies, we have to be told. We have to be told, and you know, as an Aspie, I can speak for myself as an individual sovereign Aspies. We can do. If you tell me, then we'll do. And again, we're a lot of neurotypical. There's a confusion that, or the misinterpretation that Aspies don't have compassion or empathy. It's not that. It's that Aspies, like myself included, we show compassion, empathy by action. You know, like if we can do something for another, if we can do something for another, you know, if we can do something for another. So if we can do things, you know, if we can do, then we will do, you know. And that is just what we are, of course. If we can do it, we will do it. And that's just showing compassion and empathy by action. Kind of like the Romans saying facta non verba, you know. And kind of that's how we situate how we put our compassion and empathy in action from an Aspie perspective. So it's not that we don't have compassion or empathy, it's just we show it in a different way. What are those? I'm just gonna go check. Are those bears? No way. Oh my gosh, a bear. Going to waste. I'm gonna waste it. How do you pick them, the pears? Some of them are falling down here. Yeah, whole pears. You can make so much jam with them. I guess you could. So that is the adventures of being an Aspie in a neurotypical world. I lived through depression, lost jobs, lost friends, lost employment. Nearly lost my life, nearly took my life. So all that pain, suffering, struggle, the scars, and now I'm a happy, joyous Aspie. You know, it's something which I have, and I love working out, training, exercising. I love. It's a love that it kind of, due to those special interests, it just is part of Aspies, you know, special interest, also known as obsessive interest, but it doesn't render me any justice or any Aspie justice to use the word special interest, the word obsessive interest, because an obsession is more for a neurotypical. What it is of course special interest, which of course preoccupy our routines. So our daily routines, daily life, of course, are preoccupied in those manners, which of course are involved, of course, to get doing with them, and of course involved in doing those activities with super intensity, super focus, super engagement, super concentration. And one of it would be to focus on that detail of the number. Why is there a number 44 on the back of the car? Attention to certain details is, of course, something which has to be concluded in the manner of where we are now integrated in the dynamics of the social sphere and the social confluence. Hey, look at these beauties, you know. Look at these beauties. That's nice. I love that. And that is just something which is nice there. Wow. I just love the white and pink, you know. White and pink, so nice. White and pink, you know, super nice, man. The colorful flowers. Yeah, colorful flowers. That's what I love them when I go on the marches, and you know, you can see from my hundreds of videos, you know, something where we are now, you know. Yeah, those are nice. Like pink and white, quite a combo, and so flashy, so feeling good, you know. So those are flowers which are, you know, to get on the go with that, and that is just something which of course regurgitate our the life, of course, affirming manner, which of course we are now in the individual aspiness, and these aspy traits are not evil, bad, malicious, or negative. They are part of who we are as citizens, as people who are neurodivergent and who have these special traits where we are. And those special traits, again, are not negative. They're not, of course, they're not bad or evil. That's where we have to draw the line, because of course you cannot say that they're bad, evil, or negative in any way whatsoever. So that's where we are now, and that's what we have to do continuously to, of course, make it so that we don't lose the jobs, so that the 80% unemployment somehow drops and aspies are accorded. Me, I just need understanding and, you know, some LOVE, you know, if you want to do that loving or black or white. Otherwise, black, white, or man or woman, you know. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours, basically. That's how we rock and roll. So, and yeah, we have to be told more directly, stop talking about this subject, because we might not know that a person is not interested. If you don't vocally verbalize it, we might just go on and on about certain topics. So picking up on social cues can be different. Beautiful flowers, beautiful garden, the whole garden is nice. So picking up on social cues, you know, that can be more difficult for us. It's picking up on nonverbal communication, and it's been a learning process. It's always learning, you know, always integrating, and always building these bridges in the way that we can build them, because sometimes the bridges have to be built from both sides, and sometimes, wow, what a garden here, I love it. So nice. Just, I love the colors. Makes me think of the Napolitan. So nice and bright. Just this mixture of flowers I just like a lot. Just makes me personally want to eat a Napolitan ice cream, you know. Napolitan ice cream. So, yeah. It looks like the Napolitan, the 4-color ice cream, which is kind of white, pink, and like burgundy, a bit of that kind of mauve, you know. Napolitan. So finalizing on Asperger's, we have to build bridges. We have to build bridges of understanding. Some aspects require more support than others. Myself, minimal support. Minimal. I do have those ritual routines, which aspects do have, and even today I was supposed to leave early. Wow, this is nice also. I love it. Those 4-color mixture, see, like the ice cream, Napolitan it's called, the ice cream. So some aspects require more support. I do have the special, aka obsessive interest. I do have a routine, a ritual routine, and that is something which we have, of course, to get it on the go, and a ritual routine that I do have in the appellation. Now we have this one. That's what we got, and that's how we gotta get drilling with that. And of course here is where we're gonna go, of course, where we Apple, and of course where we are now in the situational awareness, where we are, the dynamics, you know, the social cohesion and of building bridges. I guess I'm crossing a bridge in some ways, you know, I'm crossing some bridges myself now, and those bridges we gotta keep building together, and that is just what we gotta do. We gotta do it. Build bridges. It's not evil, bad, malicious. It has its strengths, and usually those strengths revolve around those special interests, which are also known as obsessive interests, but doesn't render myself as an Aspie justice, or I don't believe from the fellow community of Aspies, which is a tiny community of less than 1%, any justice to use the word obsessive. It is a special interest. We have routines, rituals, our whole life type of daily activities revolve around those. Especially even today, I spend hours and hours revising, studying, revising in parallel to my work of the past years, the world of geopolitics. So now we're gonna end it on that, and just we're gonna go in the world. We're gonna immerse ourselves in the world of geopolitics, in the world, which is a universe in itself. It has layers and layers and layers of understanding and meaning, and layers of focus, layers of areas of study, areas of knowledge, areas of wisdom, and areas of dynamics which encompass everything to do from culture, anything to do with linguistics, anything to do with statistics, trade alliance, military alliance, and the topic of, there are several intersecting topics, has to be today, the topic of course the top topic today has to be, of course, the parade in China, military parade in China, when Putin and Xi Jinping, Putin and Kim Jong-il, the leader of North Korea, the the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, attended. And of course the strike on the boat, supposedly 11 narco-terrorists struck from Venezuela, so the potential military involvement of the United States military in Venezuela. So leave the baggage at the door. You're entering my domain, my topic, parallel to geopolitics. I also love sports and fitness. Please, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, reduce the cost of the tickets. Gotta reduce the costs of the tickets, and please give some free tickets. I would buy the whole season for the Professional Women's Hockey League. My favorite sport is dancing. Dancing, Dancing is my favorite sport. Personally, that is my favorite sport, is dancing. And I get that rock and roll, and I can rock and roll for hours and dance for hours and do geopolitical studies and analysis, pretty much with focus, super concentration, super dedication, as we Aspies have. And we have weird characteristics, but we have a lot of things to contribute. And now what I'm gonna say, you have to fully integrate and fully focus on this that I predicted with all the suffering, memory loss. It's a long time, because spring 2014, that's 11 years and 4 months ago. So that's a long time. So I have a good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I guess. It gets blackout before spring 2014, but that's, of course, 11 years and 4 months ago. And I think they're holding hands and they're getting on that blurred, and that's just something which I gotta be on that loving with that. And I like to matchmake. If you're black, white, white, black, man or woman, you know, you can come do some of that good loving with me. But that gives me hope. I'm holding hands and knowing that somebody's gonna make love tonight, you know, in the free world. Somebody gonna make love in the free world, you know, because although financially stressed, I got in the backpack that donation, and that of course donation is gonna allow me to have some food, and I got $6 in the pocket for me, of course, to buy food or buy some sweets. And for example, an ASPI, we might be focusing on details such as why is that P72 number there, what's all those details of the weight of this special, and look at other things such as this detail here, the fabrication, the company, certain details. That's another ASPI characteristics and trait of Asperger's. Beautiful sunset. So leave the baggage at the door. We're entering the world, the universe of geopolitics. We are taking flight, going on the spaceship in this sunset. Somewhere the sun is rising every second. There's a sunset and a sunrise, you know. Every second there's a sunset and a sunrise, and that is just now what is happening now. Of course, there's a sunset and a sunrise, you know. And I gotta admire the workers who build. This makes me think of the 4 buildings which I want to build, because it looks a bit Colosseum-like. As you can see, it has a little bit of the circular architecture, a little bit of the round architecture, and of course, yours truly always wills to build the 4. I'm gonna, before I forget, because I don't want to forget, as you know, it's a Dragon versus Trump, because have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018, when Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel back in 2018, 10%, and now the tariffs were augmented. But I always salute the workers. I'm just gonna wait, take 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to the side and wait for my fellow cousin to jog on the way, because my assessment of the security was that if I go with my backpack and my cousin is coming and the other one's coming running and jogging, I said I'm gonna take 4 steps to the right so that my cousin jogs in security, and my friend, my other cousin, was texting. So I assessed, of course, that the assessment was that, of course, there was an added safety for me to continue. So there was an added safety risk. That was just my assessment. That's why I moved to the right side a bit. So now we're gonna go, and this is a safety assessment. That is way dangerous. Look how deep that pothole is. See? We got a lot of work in the empire of the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 308s for the 10, the 50, and the 3. And you can see we got a lot of arbeit to do, and this is arbeit work and blah 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 blah. Sometimes it takes that brains and muscle, and it takes a little bit of that doing with it. And now I'm gonna cross the street and I'm gonna enter the universe of geopolitics. I am an independent geopolitical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. I developed strategy for the North American Collectif, NORAD. Leave the baggage at the door. I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, in October 2019, I predicted what's happening now. So that is a beautiful architecture as well, what I have now. So there you see there. So before I go into my prediction, which has turned into a reality, that we have to know, of course, I will to build the 4 consequently together, which I will to build the 4 together with the construction workers of the Empire, the North American Collectif, Canada, United States joint. And as a Dragon versus Trump, I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, and have been ever since 2019, when Donald, actually I've been challenging him since 2018 spring, and that's why I got those red gloves that you see at the beginning of the March journey. Those red gloves I'm auctioning for $1 million. Those red gloves I'm auctioning for $1 million, you know. So those red gloves I'm auctioning for $1 million to give 50% half to my anonymous friend, and that is just the dynamic of it to go, and that is just something which we have, of course, to be on the side of all the spheres where we are now, in all the dynamics where we are consequently involved in, and we have to be happily about all the dynamics in our North American civilizational complex, you know. So I'm gonna just go one step here, pause, and let my uncle pass with the bike pass with the bike, it's got to be passed with the bike, and that is just something which we have, of course, to be, and of course to appellate over the dynamics where we are involved. So that is something where we have to be doing, in all the appellational situational awarenesses of where we are now. It's all the domain. So back, of course, in 2019, of course, I had predicted what's happening now. And of course, being that I predicted what's happening now, I, of course, consequently got to say that I have some solutions. And of course, the solutions is, of course, manifesting in all, of course, the domain and all the circumstantial apparatus where we are now involved in all the situation where we are involved. So being that I predicted, got to turn your heads left or right, and it's something which we have, of course, to do, and we have, of course, to be in all the apparatus where we have to be doing ourselves and doing together is something where we are now involved with. And now that to a degree where our involvement, I'm discussing about foreign action, DMAA, direct military assistance and action. So that's what I'm making a reference to. You can see my past videos, but we'll get to DMAA, of course. We'll get, of course, to DMAA in the consequential where we have to be, And of course, now we have to get doing to the analysis. And before we get into the DMAA, I have to discuss the 4 buildings which I will to build, which I will to build together with you in North America. So of course the building of those 4 is consequently, of course, the apparatus, the North American, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, to be 11 times, of course, 11 times, of course, bigger than the Super Bowl 47 and other Super Bowls were fought, played, battled out in what's now known as the Caesar Superdome, Caesar Superdome, as the Caesar Superdome. Before Caesar Superdome, of course, it changed names, and of course, it changed names several times. Now it's known as the Caesar Superdome, beautiful garden, but before that, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz. That is gorgeous. That just quadruples my smile. Look at those. That makes me think of, again, some ice cream that I would enjoy. Some sorbet, maybe. So nice. So, of course, the Imperial People's Coliseum, we're going to build it to be 11 times bigger than the Coliseum, where it was battled and fought and played. Well, one of my favorite Super Bowls is known as the Super Bowl 47, aka has several nicknames. Bro Bowl, the Bro Bowl, Blackout Ball, and others. Of course, it has to be, of course, in the interjection, of course, of all the simulations where we are now. So the Bro Bowl, the Blackout Bowl, those are several of the nicknames, the Hardball Bowl of Super Bowl 47. So we're going to build a mass Coliseum arena, which is going to be 11 times bigger than that sports arena known as Caesar Superdome, which used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that used to be known as the Louisiana Superdome. So just like myself, changed names several times, and I've been changing my name, but officially still gotta pay, but it's Adrian Hanna Dragon. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself, with blood, sweat, and tears, to turn that A into an O, and A into an E, and, get that H in an H, Hanna. So that is just something where we are. So that is the building which I will to see, starting with me now doing these marching steps for the construction workers. I got those twins, the kisses, by which is always God bless and God is kiss. God bless and God is kiss our coming empire, the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, and on the Canadian-US border to signify our merging and our fusion into the Imperial Republic Democratic Complex. We're gonna build this massive Coliseum to have sportus in perpetuitis, 24/7 sports and fitness activity, and of course sports and fitness activity. And the first inauguration event, sports event, is going to be me fighting Dragon versus Trump, me fighting Donald Trump, and of course me fighting Donald Trump is going to be, of course, in the situational complex where we are, to be, and that is sometimes which you're going to build that massive super structure for sportus in perpetuities, and that is just the dynamic where we are, and of course that is just the situational aspects, and that is also one of the 4. And we're also going to build a Forgotten Goddess temple, GODDSS, Forgotten Goddess temple. Look at that moon. Forgotten Goddess temple. That is just something which we're going to build together, you know, in the concomitant thing in the Appalachian. We're going to build the Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS temple, you know, in the Appalachian. And we're going to build the pyramid. That is the House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon. It's going to be scarlet, crimson. Scarlet and crimsons are... Basically, scarlet and crimson is a shade of red. So scarlet and crimson is basically a shade of red, right? R-E-D, my favorite color, red. So scarlet and crimson are shades of red. Scarlet and crimson are shades of red. So that is just what it is. Scarlet and crimson are shades of red. Right? So we're going to build that complex. And we're going to build, of course, the complex. Of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the House of the Dragon, the pyramid, House of the Dragon. And with it, we're also going to build the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ plus community and fellow neurodivergents, you know. And that's just something which we're going to have to do together to build it. As you can see, all the construction work and the houses which are built here. That's quite amazing. And if you go on this journey in Montreal, that one has to be fixed. That's a danger also, especially with bikes or children. He's been here at the corner, children putting their legs. So it's just an individual security assessment and public safety assessment. And we got to balance, eh? The public and the private. Always has to be balanced. The public and the private always has to be balanced, you know. Always a balance between the public and the private, and the republicanism and the democracy of our coming imperial fusion of Canada, the true north, strong and free, with the land of the free and the home of the brave. Is not enough. We're going to be the empire of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving and the just together. So let's build the four, on the Canadian-US border, the Imperial People's Coliseum. Imperial People's Coliseum. Imperial People's Coliseum on the North American border of Canada, United States. We're going to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. And of course, the pyramid, the House of the Dragon. That is just what we're going to build. And that is just something which we got. That's another big pothole there. Kind of like on the go with that. And that is something which we have to interject. So let's build a 444. Here we're gonna wait for the passage. I guess we can. I'm gonna cross the street over there, but it's just that garden is so nice. That garden, those colors there, I just love them so much. Gotta be careful, buddy, because you gotta be careful. Right, a car, you're crossing on the red, buddy. Rather see you making love, you know, hugging, working out, than being struck by a car. Not on my watch. HAWK. Hawk. So of course something which we have to, that is just so nice, just whatever the case may be, and that is just so nice. It's just super plateau, and that is just how we have to be doing with that, you know. That is just super nice, super nice. I just love it. I wish I could give my anonymous friend a house. If I make a million a tree, I'm gonna give 50% half, and gotta get it on that meditation now. And that is just something which we have to be doing. See, wow, look at that. Wow, just so nice. The whole flowers there, flowers so nice, and beautiful flowers with that. And that is just something which we have, of course, to get it on the go. And that is just something on the go with that. And that's just something where we got to do it now, you know. For the left and the right and in the middle and in the center, we have to get it on that appellation, you know, to getting on the go now, to get now doing, you know. So that is just something which we have now. And there's something which we got to be doing on that. And got to get doing on that drill. This is so nice to see the twins. They kind of look like twins, see? Kind of look like twins. I say twins, but I know that's what I call them, the twins. The twins. My uncle nods. He says, "Yeah." I call them the twins, twin warriors. The twin warriors. That's what I call those ones at the corner there. So Aspie, like myself, because I'm an Aspie, would focus on certain details, like this detail. See, it says there, that's basically the year, 09-2013. Is it a 5 or a 3? So small, can see. I think it's a 3, right? So that's a while ago. That's a while ago, and that was, I don't know, just the details. So those details sometimes are focusing on those details there. I'm not sure. Well, it's probably a marking of the year of when they were put there. So this ASPE traits, of course, and the characteristics is just focusing on certain details. So that traits and details is something which we all focus on as ASPEs, and that's just a manifestation and the characteristics of the manifestation of all the ASPE traits, which can be, of course, embodied sometimes in, of course, ourselves as neurodivergence, as neurodivergence. So that is something which we have to be doing on that, and that is what we have to be doing. Yeah, so I was actually meditating. I think that, of course, there was the date, which when that was put. The date, the date. So that is just a characteristic, a trait of Asperger's. That is just the characteristics, traits of Asperger's. Yes. I said yes because I saw 44, then I saw 40, then I saw 41, and then 53. But now it's 44 again. And so, okay, so my brain is different. ASPE brain is different. So I was calculating the average speed. And when it's red, you have to slow down, right? Please follow that. Slow down because there's children, public safety, and whatever the case may be here. We got a lot of work to do. But, okay, so we had... Let's say we had 4 numbers, right? We had 41, right? 41, 44, right? 40 and 53. So in my brain, I added them up. And I was calculating the average, right, of those 4 cars. So the average speed of those 4 cars we have to, of course, do is 41, 41, 41, plus 40, 44, that's 85, right? 85, right? 85, you follow? Plus 40, yeah, plus 40 is 125, right? So 41 plus 40 is 81, plus 44 is 125. Because 40 times 3 is 120, then you add the 1, the 0, and the 4. That's 5 plus 120 is 120. So we're missing 53. So 125 plus 53 is 178, right? So to figure out the average, 178 is divided by 4. Of course, we can add more numbers. So 178 divided by 4 is, right? 160 divided by 4 is 40, and then it's 18 divided by 4. So it's more than 44. It's 44 point something. So let's say almost, if you can round it up, I guess, almost 45. So the average is almost 45. Almost 45 is the average. That's the brain difference, see, of Asperger's. We're different. So sometimes these weird, awkward, bizarre moments, if I would be with probably a fellow Aspe, we would probably do them now, even now, calculate and stay there the whole day, just calculating averages of the average. But of course, that can be computerized and with microchips, super intelligence, microchips, AI, that is, in fact. But my brain just automatically does incline with a certain focus, with details and certain focus about these. Focus, of course, sometimes focus about mathematics, such as, of course, the area here. The area is, these look like squares, so it will be side times side, and it would be, the area would be, it's always squared, right? If it would be meters, let's say, or yards, 4 times 4 is 16, that would be 16 yards, 16 yards square though. And if we are to have the perimeter, we have to add the 4. So if they're square, we add 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, which is also, if it's the number 4, it's also 16. But it's not square. Its perimeter is 16 meters. But if it's an area, if it's square. So that's the difference, if you follow. And these are dangerous a bit for bicycles, such as my cousin there with the bikes. You know, if it goes fast on that, that's a little bit of a danger. And even this one there, it's the citizen's assessment. So back to geopolitics, and this finalized on the 4, because I will to build, you know, the 4 buildings together with you. The Imperial Colosseum, which we're gonna be building, the Imperial Colosseum. So we're gonna be building the Imperial Colosseum on the Canadian-US border. The Imperial Colosseum. Talking of the Almighty. So of course we have the dynamics now, you know. We have the dynamics. So the dynamics are here presented before reconcussion. Maybe that's why I lost memory, concussion, or being surprised attack, and living of course in the manner now where we are confluences or where we are in the dictums, you know. But nonetheless, I will to build the 4, the Imperial. I guess it's green, I can pass. It's just because I wanted to cross on the other side, because there's some yellow flowers there that I want to visit. You see in the corner, and those white ones. So I will to build the Imperial People's Colosseum. The Imperial People's Colosseum is something which I will to build, you know. So the Imperial People's Colosseum is my wish to build as the full moon gets, and to build, of course, the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ community and neurodivergence, and of course to build also in consequence the Rainbow People's Palace in parallel, of course, to building. There's something which I will to build, of course, is the XYZ and the ABCDC. So that is just something which, of course, I have to be building together, and that is something which we got to be doing, you know, that we have to be doing now together. So build the 4 concomitantly, you know, gotta build together the Imperial People's Colosseum, and that is just something which we have to do together now. Where it starts with these steps, you know, to get it on the go with that, and admiring these beautiful flowers which we're gonna put all over the Imperial Colosseum and the Forgotten Goddess Temple. She doesn't need me, a speck of dust, just a nobody. Clit to build her temple, because she's got those pyramids, and she dances with her brother the sun, you know. She's got the pyramids. She doesn't need my temples or anybody's temples to be built, because the pyramids are tombs and temples, you know, and the goddess still rules thereof, therein. Bury a third of me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey, a third of me up in the Mount Royal, a third of me up in Mount Royal, and a third of me up in, of course, the city of the pyramids. Send a third, or every 11 years rotate my body from Mount Royal to Hampton, New Jersey, to, of course, the city of the pyramids, and whatever the case may be, on the dynamics of all the social aspects where I admire, of course, these beautiful flowers thereof, and beautiful flowers where we have to be now, of course, intermittently, and of course to build the civilizational complex where we are now, to be involved in building the 4 buildings where we are to be building thereof, and that's something together where, of course, the Imperial People's Colosseum, that that's just something where we have to be building thereof. So building the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border is something which we have to be doing, and we have to be doing with that, and that is just something where we got to be building and constructing parallel, of course, to the Imperial People's Coliseum. We're of course going to be building together the Appalachians, and we're going to be building together the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and now is something which we're going to be involved with thereafter, the Global Dragon Union, which we're going to be having, of course, in the dimensions where we are, of course, to be, and of course we are, of course, to do it in a confluence where we are to be doing on that, and of course all the domain where we have to be doing on those appellations where we are now to be involved with, and of course to get it now to be done, you know, and build thereof, and that is just something where we have to be doing together now. Of course, that is just our modus operandi and our great empire rising by building, of course, the 63, and of course the domain where we have, of course, the building of that relationship where we are now to build the constructions, of course, where we are now to build the civilizational complex of the North American Collective, and where we are now in the Appellation where we are to say that this is going to be solidifying our strongest esprit de corps for the North American Collective. This is going to be solidifying us, and it's going to be launching us towards a new world order thereof in a manner in which constructing these mega structures, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, where citizens, when they go, you know, you can scream there. You're gonna have an area where you're gonna be able to scream. Of course, we're gonna be able to scream a bit, and of course, where you're gonna be able to scream thereof, you know. So that's just something where we got to be building thereof, to getting on that doing now, and that's just something which we have to be doing, you know. That's just something where we have to be doing. That's just something where we gotta get doing on that, and that's something where we got. Qu'est-ce que tu cherches, esclave? Esclave. Look at those yellow flowers. That's also, see, there has to be a pothole.
Mickey fait que dans le sac.
We're gonna get the hydration.
Non, non, je pense que quand il y a la machine là, tu peux descendre sur McDonald's. Mais à pied, tu peux pas. Il n'y a pas de trottoir. Une rue qui s'appelle Renouveau. Parce qu'il y a pas de trottoir. Non, mais il y a marché avec ça.
Gonna check that garden out. That garden is really nice.
You don't suspect she would have taken the evening off?
Can never touch this. This is what I wanted to see. Cool. This is what I wanted to see and to admire here. It's so beautiful, it's just gorgeous. And this one is nice. This one is so nice right here. You can even touch this. This is so nice. So now I can discuss and finalize. I just wanted to take a good look at this one, especially these ones. I don't know what they're called. I have the Latin name in mind, but of course the Latin name is something which has to be done on the other side. You know, just like yours. Up the mountain we go. We got a few seconds, and that one's also nice. 4 seconds. 4 seconds is just what we need, just in time. See? That's all we needed. All we needed was 4 seconds, and that is just what it is, you know. Yeah, so let's build the 4. I'm excited. I'm ascending the mountain. I'll let that main out. This is my second home. I come here often. It's like my second home for years and years and years. And I just love this architecture. Just love this architecture. It's so nice. Look at that. Yeah, we're gonna paint a red, this one red and that one green, or a little bit of each for the dancing goddess and the dragon. Anybody wants to finance that I go up and down these stairs, you know, that would be nice. 300 times for $300, and bring me the tools. You know, I gotta paint all of the benches here in Mount Royal, my second home, my mistress, my mountain. And of course, gonna go all the way to the top in the darkness and back, come back by the moon. And of course, gonna discuss again the 4 buildings which with your help support, and we're gonna build together. So with one, it's gonna be on the Canadian-US border, the Imperial Republic's People's Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which changed names several times. The Caesar Superdome became, actually now it's known as the Caesar Superdome. Before that, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that, it was known as the Louisiana. So it changed names several times. Several Super Bowls occurred there. Several Super Bowls occurred, and of course those Super Bowls which occurred, or one of them is Super Bowl 47, one of my top 5 favorites. Paradoxically, my 49ers losing to the Ravens. Super Bowl 47 is known as the Bro Ball, aka Hardball Ball, aka Blackout Ball. So that's several Super Bowls were fought, battled out there at New Orleans Superdome, and I guess it was a rebirth post Katrina, you know. It's like my rebirth, you know. Rebirthed like 4 times. This is on my 4th rebirth this summer, celebrating 8 years, you know, since I crossed Canada coast to coast and got out of depression and being suicidal. And here I am with that backpack, got that melon, got a little bit of food inside it, and that is just something what we have to be doing. Now, of course, in the appellation, of course, of the structure, of course, so we are. Now, of course, the being, of course, in the dictums of the left and right and Z, and all the appellations that we're going to build together on the Canadian-US border. The Imperium, biggest ever structure, sports, for sportless in perpetuities, for sports in perpetuities, for sports 24/7, and the inauguration event is gonna be me fighting Donald Trump as the Dragon versus Trump event. Since 2018, I have been able to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, and imposing tariffs was a mistake geopolitically, and of course, I guess we did some of our own mistakes and could have done better ourselves, but regardless to stay, we're also going to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess. Forgotten Goddess Temple. She doesn't need me. Limdic, Dicklit, androgynous, aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher, mystic, and independent geopolitical theoretical honest theorist to build her, of course, the temples, but nonetheless, we're going to be building, of course, together also the Rainbow People's Coliseum for my fellow neurodivergents and the neurodivergence community. That's what we're going to be building. The Rainbow People's Palace to be, of course, for the neurotypical population, and of course for fellow Aspies and neurodivergents, and of course to build the Imperial People's Coliseum together with the fellowships which we're going to be doing on that, and that is something which we're going to be doing together, plus the Rainbow People's Palace. That is something which we're going to have to do together now in all the compositions where we are now united to build on all the circumstantial representations of the building of those 4 in whatever order, I guess, with the bricks start first, and now we're gonna go in here in the darkness. Gotta be careful because the branches sometimes fall here. I recommend you stay on the main road, which is lighted, which has lights. Thank you, Hydro-Quebec. It's best if you stay on the main road, although I know the mountain is like my second home, but there is a risk of falling branches, and that is just the falling branches what we have now to do, and we have our adverse relationship to do in consequence of all the influences where we are now. To stay on the road, I advise you completely, and I just gotta adjust my belt a bit. Just adjust because it's a bit adjusted, and I see a little bit on that go and a little bit on that now, and build the 4 is the call. Rock and roll, let's build the 4. Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. The Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. Here in Montreal we have what's called the St. Joseph's Oratory. So build that Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, which is going to be a mega structure. So we're going to build that. We're going to build the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergents and LGBTQ community. And we're also going to build the house, pyramid, the House of the Dragon. Which is going to be scarlet, crimson, House of the Dragon. For yours truly, where we can have open houses, open doors, Monday till the Sabbath, I guess, because, you know, I'm gonna need some privacy time, you know, where I guess, do some of that 18 plus, you know, do a little bit of that masturbation, you know, masturbation. Do a little bit of that masturbation, you know, because I'm not sexually frustrated. I guess if I would be, I would discuss it, and friends will benefit. Only what I'm really craving is a massage. Massage this morning. You know what? Millionaires, billionaires, Wall Street, finance those public workers who pick up the garbage, the recycling, and tomorrow I got the service known as compost. Compost is gonna be picked up. You know, compost is gonna be picked up Thursday, tomorrow. Today's Wednesday, the 3rd of September. So there's gonna be some work with that, and it's always on that work, and that's something which I enjoy, you know, in my own ways. The work that I do as an independent artist, athlete, philosopher, and geopolitical honest and theorist, and calling the construction workers to support, and all willingly loving, pledge allegiance. Let's get the NACWP, the North American Collective Workers' Party, based on my philosophies, initiatives, and 21st century grace labor, and where we are today with a financial situation which is affecting not just myself, but we have a very dire financial situation for the majority of the population. Most of the people are financially stressed, and of course I hear that there's more labor strikes than there have been in a long time. More labor strikes than there have been in a long time. More labor strikes than there have been in a while. You know, there have been so many labor strikes in the recently, and that's just something which we have to do on the work, you know, and it's always arbeit, always work. When I work independently, and I had many jobs, but just for Aspies, maintaining them is more difficult. Thank you to the fellow Aspie who sent $25.44. Last September, I believe, October, I bought a bottle of wine, one of the most affordable on the market. I bought some bacon, and I bought myself some of that cheese, I think I bought wafers. Yeah, wafers or something sweet, because it was for the Sabbath, and I see a light, somebody coming in the light. I guess the brave here in the night, venturing out, and it's something which I love coming. And sometimes there are people coming with some lights when it's night, and even when it's not night, usually sometimes people come, but usually I roam here in the mistress, my doctor mistress atop the mountain, Marwell, where I love to come, and I love to enjoy, and I love to work out. The air is fresh, you know. The air here atop is very fresh, and that's just something what we do, you know. And my safety, my fellow citizens' safety, of course, all who are endeavored here to be safe and enjoy the prudency, because sometimes the branches fall, and there's the possibility of branches falling, especially if it gets stormy or windy. So I always advise, and you can see many videos for years and years and years. I always let people know, but it seems that in the past years during COVID, there is more, and I even captured on camera branches falling, big branch even. I think last year in the spring and last year autumn, I caught it on camera, you know, where it was, of course, the branches fell. So the falling of the branches here, something which I get the dynamics, of course, of the interjection and the appellation of where we are now, to be suffused with all the integrity in the manner where we are to be now. In the wilderness, my mistress, the forest on the mountain. My mistress, the forest. Mistress, not just my mistress, but on the mountain, and let's build a Forgotten Goddess temple. House of the Dragon can be here on the mountain, and Forgotten Goddess temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, and of course the Forgotten Goddess temple and the Imperial People's Coliseum, you know, to be built, of course, on the Canadian-US border, together where we are now. You can see part of the moon. So now we're gonna go back to geopolitics, leave the baggage at the door, And we're gonna just rock and roll a bit, do a rock and roll song, and hit back that geopolitics. Rock and roll for the construction workers who are gonna build the 4. Hell, build the 4! Empire as before. Full moon got those kisses by the trillions. Got those kisses by the trillions. See some light, I see some jogging. Gotta get it for you know it, for that you see so that you show it. On the left and right, you can see up in the sight, you can see up in the light, you can see up in the skies, you can see up in the lights. I started sneezing. Somebody passed with a dog. Maybe it was the dog, because I get allergic reactions to certain types of furs. You know, thick, lengthy fur. Poodles I can go without. And he got a bit close to the leg, but like last time in one of the videos, you see a thick, furry, long, thick fur. I just start sneezing due to certain species of dogs. And as poodles, I can pet and forever without sneezing. But certain species of dogs, due to their fur length and the length and the thickness of their fur, I start sneezing. It's like allergic reactions, basically. But besides that, I love pets and animals, flora, fauna, and I love coming here, doing many hours and hours and years of cleaning, you know, the environment. And it takes the individual action, eh? The individual action has to be concorded with, of course, the collective action, because if I don't do it and you don't do it, then it doesn't make sense. Sometimes I find here atop the mountain, I find a lot of different things, a lot of different bags and atop the mountain in the forest, bags and cans and plastic and bottles and all sorts of bottles, which you see me in my videos. I put them in the recycling. So that's just how I gotta do. So now geopolitics, especially the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. Now in the context of today's geopolitical environment and the solidification of relations furthering their military, political, economic alliance, the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now what I'm gonna say now, you have to say yes. You cannot say no before I discuss the DMAA, DMAA, Direct Military Assistance for Action, which is the philosophical theoretical framework, a working theory and philosophy and a reference framework for NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, member countries, of which there are 32. Sweden is the last, of which, of course, Canada and the United States are part of NATO. And before October 7th, I was advocating for Mexico and Israel to actually become the 32nd and the 33rd, respectively. But now, post October 7th, I guess that's something we're going to see once the conflict finalizes a resolution and a reconciliation. So before I discuss all this, we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back in October 2019, October 17th to be specific. In October 17th, I put my first video when I predicted that there's going to be a World War III scenario, an international conflagration. I have proof, I have the videos online, of course, so I predicted what's happening now. As a paradoxically, due to my Asperger's, I have this special interest known as geopolitics. So geopolitical studies, analysis is a 24/7 constant with me. It's constantly, every day. Study, analysis, revision, every day. Study, analysis, revision. And it's every day. So back in 2019, October to be specific, so October 17 it started. I have predicted that what's happening now is going to be what's happening now in a general manner. So not every detail, right? In a general manner, I had predicted, of course, what's happening now. I have predicted what's happening now in a general manner. I have predicted now what's happening now. I had predicted now what's happening now in a general manner. So I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, a World War III scenario. You heard that correct? I even have proof because I have the videos online. Consequently, I even created a workout training program system, officially titled the General War Integrated Training, the General War Integrated All Body Training System, the General War Integrated All Body Training System, aka the Draconis workout, of course, to go. Consequently, with such a scenario whereas, of course, we had established whatever the consequences is to be, of course, in the formulation, of course, of all the appellations where we are now. So, of course, the situational awareness, of course, is that I had predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019 in October. in October, November. So I predicted what's happening now in a general overall manner, not in an individual detailed manner, but in an overall general manner. And I even made, produced that workout training program system back in 2019 to go with such an event. In other words, a World War III scenario and situation. Whereas that scenario, that situation is unfolding. How I predicted it, not every detail, but in a general manner, it's following the pattern and the general overall pursuit of my prediction dating back to 2019, October 17th. I've posted the first video, and of course, consequently, I created the general war integrated total body training system to go hand in hand with such a scenario as the aforementioned. My workout training program system's title, official title, long, more academic title, is the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. The General War Integrated Total Body Training System is made for Canada, United States, NORAD, NATO, for NATO member countries in case of a need to mobilize such a population, such as a population as, of course, I have been says, and I have been stating it to be as a general motive of the population that I have, of course, done, and of course done consequently to be, and of course to do now, of course, in the situational awareness where we are now, that pattern follows, of course, the same conclusion as, of course, I had concluded back in 2019, that is going to be so, that this World War III international conflagration is happening, or that will happen in the future. I gave about a 7-year point of reference, of course, the point of reference where we are, and that is just something where we are in the appellative and the circumstantial efforts where we are now in the dictums of all the civilizational complexes of where we are now, of course, in the dictums of all the societal problems which have begun. Suffice it also important to say that I also survived COVID. I had COVID back between February and March. About mid-February I started feeling sick and ill. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. COVID, I had it on my knees. It was like death, pestilence, and disease. I was really sick. I really thought I was gonna die. I thought those were my last days, and I survived. Somehow I survived COVID. I got triple vaxxed, and I urge all, of course, to keep the protocols of COVID. Keep the protocols of COVID. That is the hygienic COVID protocols, because I don't know what caused COVID. I believe it was snakes to human beings, but I don't know what caused COVID. My belief that it was snakes to human beings is not 100% confirmed. Thus, I cannot rule out another possibility, such as a bioweapon. As more and more I'm classifying fentanyl as a tempered with bioweapon rather than a drug, because it doesn't make sense. But the drug trade, it's kind of like a business. You want the customers, if you're a drug dealer, to keep on coming regularly to buy and purchase. But if there's so many deaths and overdoses due to COVID, there's something doesn't add up. So maybe the tempering with the fentanyl, whatever the tempering is more converting it, making it more into a bioweapon, What I'm saying, because of these mass, just so many overdoses increasing in the past, 7 years of COVID, they're just going up and up and up. So anyways, I just gonna hydrate here, gonna continue, of course, the discussion, and we're gonna go down, check a little bit of that Montreal, check a little bit of that good Hawk Island, and here we got a little bit of that hydration. And I'd also build this fountain here. I'm gonna let about 10 seconds for the pipes to clear. See, it's the water pipes to clear here, and we're gonna drink a little bit of water. Usually I let about 10 seconds because there's of course iron and solids and minerals which can be harmful for the body. So just let the pipes clear. But salutations, rock and roll for those who build it all the way up to the mountain, for me, for you, for us, together, to have clean running water and to jog and to do all the activities, to hydrate on top of the mountain with clean water. This is quite a feature of engineering and a privilege of civilization nonetheless. So HYDRATE, and we're gonna get that geopolitics rock and rolling. So we're just gonna hydrate properly, and this is gonna give me a boost and to provide a better information and be able to proceed with my geopolitical analysis and the DMAA theory, the direct military assistance or action or assistance, vice versa. It can be interchanged reciprocally. There's just something where we are now, you know. There's just something where we are, top of the mountain. Woman, that is something where we are now, you know, to be on that full moon, you know. So that is just something where we gotta be. That is just something which we have, of course, to be mindful of all the. I wonder sometimes, how did they build it actually to get it all the way at top of the mountain? The pipes must be somewhere here. I guess they connected the pipes with the pipes that are in the chalet, right? Because of course the pipes to go all the way at top, and that's the one that's here at top for the most point. That is something where we are now today. So of course all the XYZ things where we have, of course, now is something where we gotta appellative about, and we gotta be that appreciation. Okay, that's the appreciation where we are now, to get on the left and on the right and in the Z, and that's just something where we got another one here. But this, that was another one there, and that's just something where we got, you know, to getting on the do. That is just something that we have to be doing, you know, and that is right here where we are involved in the aspects on the left and on the right and in the Z, and that's where we're gonna go glance at the city. Not discuss much here because we have to pick it up afterwards, because now there's going to be a bit of noise. Welcome to big welcome. Welcome to the pain. Alarm. It's a miracle.
Is that also Montreal?
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome. There it is. There it is. Welcome. Some more machines. Alright, boys. National Guard. Big. White boys. That's my favorite. Skyscrapers. And feel the pain. Feel the pain. White boys. Occasion. Welcome to American. White boys, big dicks. Militarized police, militarized police, militarized police. Welcome, America, welcome to Troops America, welcome to Troops America, National Guard, white boys, white boys, big occasions, big occasions, still a bobo, still a 5-0, still a police, 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 ho for the police, ho for the popo, ho for the popo, cocaine. Look at that moon, man. Okay, that's it. So that's where we're gonna go. I'll go back. Never touch me, boys. Not the vice police. Popo. Fair gangsters. Gangsters, the National Guard. Parasite. So that's where we're gonna go now. Around about it, we're gonna discuss the DMA now, the DMAA, the direct military assistance, and action. So this is a geopolitical framework. So now, if you're not interested in geopolitics, you gotta leave the baggage at the door, and it's gonna be strictly and merely a geopolitical relations. Geopolitical relations, and it's relative, of course, to the geopolitical relations. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and analysis, it's an analysis of the theories, a framework of reference, and it encompasses, of course, not just a theoretical framework, but of course it encompasses something much bigger than that. It is actually where we can frame ourselves to be in the future, for today and for the future, and that is just something where we are, of course, now in the dictums, where we are. All of our characteristics and all of our actions, that is, they refer, have to be frameworked in this according to the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, and that is just something what we have to do in all the consequences where we are now to appellate. So that is the dictum, the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. So the direct military assistance and action is just something we gotta do together, of course, in the consequence of where we are now, to have the DMAA established as a frame of reference for the time being now, for the present, 2025, and for the future. So again, we're going to go back to 2019, October 17th to be precise, around October 17th. I had predicted the current situation, which is of course unfolding now in the current situation, which is unfolding now in the characteristics where we are, of course, now where we live, So I had predicted that there's going to be a international conflagration, and an international conflagration we are now at the doorsteps, where we are now is where I predicted it in a general manner. Of course, not every detail by detail, but in a general manner, this is what I predicted. The current state of affairs in the world, worldwide, of course, state of affairs, and of course that was my prediction, and that was the characteristic, and that was, of course, the prediction. Back, of course, in October 17th, 2019. So that is, of course, the consequential prudence where we are to get doing on that, and of course, to get. Furthermore, we have, of course, to intellectualize, and of course, without being the intellectual appellations, is something where we have, of course, to be in all the side, of course, of the prudence and all the prudential apparatus, because it is going to require wisdom of a discernment. I'm not going to be too academic. Or scholarly about it, and of course, it has nothing to do with other theories, propositions, but of course the theory proposition where we have to be understanding around the DMAA that it is a working theoretical framework and point of reference thereof for future action, or reservation for action or assistance vis-a-vis NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, NATO. So it relates to NATO. It's not related, but it's related to the world, but consequently it is for NATO countries to as a working theory. So the DMAA, so again keep in mind that I predicted what's happening now back of course in 2019, October 17, and I consequently created a workout training program system, officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, to go hand in hand with such an event as we had seen unfolding now, and of course all the consequential international conflagration and the end of the world order, which was established for the past 44 plus years, since about 1978 when Deng Xiaoping opened up China and established special economic zones, and after Mao died in 76, in 1978 Deng Xiaoping did some reforms of China and it opened up economically, not so politically, social politically, culturally it didn't change much, right? It's just economically China opened up, not other reforms. Democratic reforms and other reforms were not part of the opening up of China. Was a strictly economic, financial, commercial affairs, right? It was not, and if it was not commercial, right? It was only commercial, that is only commercial, economic, financial. It was not in terms of social, cultural, or political. It was only strictly, merely had to do with the opening up of the economy. The economy, you know, had to do strictly with opening up of the economy. So that is something which has to be understood fully, and in all the positions where we are going to be moving forward from this point in on, as the discussion of the frame of reference furthermore from today, from now on until whenever. So keep that in mind. So the New World Order as we knew it, especially after the formation of, after the Cold War, just going to stretch a bit here. See, that's my favorite skyscraper there. That's my favorite skyscraper. You got a little bit of that pyramid there where we got a little bit of that pyramid. So that is something where we have to be doing. And you see the pyramid, of course, the consequential pyramid in Appellation, of course, where we are now, to fundamentally institute, of course, all the organizational structures of where we are now, of course, for the Dancing Garasavia, the DGA, and all the communicative Appellation, where we are, of course, in the infrastructure to build, of course, the infrastructure for the total security, total service, total defense of the apparatus, where we are now, to be consequently and, of course, informatively where we are, to be, of course, of a social nature, of a cultural nature, of a geopolitical nature. The DMAA has to be fully understood as a point of reference, as a working theory and protocol even as a protocol and a working theory, which is going to propel us for the future. Beautiful city here. Going to just give some salutations to the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, firefighters, LOV firefighters, those keeping us safe. Ain't nobody perfect. I always appreciate and sing some rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who also do their criminal rehabilitation, as I sing their rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, all the security apparatus of the North American Collective, always for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3. Somebody got to sing some of that rock and roll for the LOV, for the farmers, truckers across the 63 now, with that bacon, that cheese, that lettuce, all those delivering food, of course, all those in the fast food. And you can see that the bridge is kind of a bit on that rainbow side of the bridge, so it's always something for me to appreciate and acknowledge the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the doctors, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And I believe there's some music there, somebody dancing is my favorite sport, dance for me, of course, 11-fold. That is, of course, the category and information, of course, of the North America Collective, where we are, of course, now to appellate, and of course to structure ourselves in the framework of the DMA has to be fully understood. So super important to pay close attention, listen to it several times, as we're going to discuss it prior to me discussing the DRT, the Debt Refusion Theory, here from atop the mountain, my second home, the Mistress Mount Royal, and these beautiful lights come from Hydro-Quebec. Salutation to the Hydro-Quebec workers of the past and present, and all the infrastructure workers, public workers who do that public sanitation. Now I can see the bridge is part of that rainbow, part of myself being part of the neurodivergent, and of course the LGBTQ community plus, and the skyscrapers were built, and all those who build these skyscrapers, let's build some more, and let's build the 4, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, where me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate and have sporters in perpetuities, and of course have special sports events monthly for the workers, and the Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the Oratory of St. Joseph, and the House of the Dragon, and of course the Rainbow People's Palace. That's my favorite skyscraper, the pyramid, the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action. The DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, is a theory, is a framework, is a frame of reference, is a point to be, of course, implemented and of course strategized around. So it's also a strategy in many ways to develop further strategies for action or for action, inaction as well, both for action or assistance or inaction vis-a-vis that the DMAA, direct military assistance or action or assistance, it has to do only with military affairs. So once again, this has nothing to do with humanitarian aid, providing food, providing sanitary pads, providing, of course, medicaments, medicine, providing sanitation, providing anything to do with humanitarian. It's strictly and merely military assistance or action, and direct military assistance or action has to be the word direct. It is because it relates to NATO member countries or NATO as a whole, which undertook in the past and present countries, individual countries who are part of NATO, and others relates to the possibility of potential consequences, such as that those foreign armies, foreign groups might even employ transnational criminal syndicate organized groups for fomenting unrest, riots internally in NATO by utilizing certain subversive methods, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 different methods, because and as a consequence also of the DMAA, direct military assistance or action or assistance vis-a-vis NATO and of course the NATO sphere, what they did and of course what the protocols are of course to be involved in the corrective attributes, whether we're going to use it in the future or we're going to refrain as a NATO collective, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is our military alliance, which celebrated 75 years last year, which was established in 1949 after the Cold War, which lasted almost 45 years. Some say 46, more than 45. I say about 45 years. About, more or less, 45 years. So that being understood, what NATO is, what NATO is not, that is of course the consequences where we have of course to appellate and of course to be involved in all the domains where we are now, to basically do it and of course to implement the DMAA as a theory, as a strategy, as a frame of reference. As we look at the camera is gazing at the moon. I'm gonna now explain it. D stands for direct, it's an acronym. DM, M for military, A for action, and A for assistance. Or AA can be reversed. A for action, A for assistance, or assistance, A for assistance, or A for action. So DMAA, direct military assistance or action, they can be, of course, consequently in the manners where they are now, to be consequential, of course, to be prudential of where we are now, in all the situational awareness where we are now, to be living in all the sides of the loving manner where we are now, to be involved with all our doings, all our executions thereof, starting from today as a point of reference in regards to the DMAA. A, direct military assistance or action or assistance, as we're gonna move towards the future. So, an example of DMAA, and keep in mind that those four acronyms, direct military assistance or action or assistance, AA again can be inversed, has a potential C, which stands for consequence to the DMAA. So there's a possibility of a consequence to and due to the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. There's a possible consequence vis-a-vis the DMAA, whether it's done in such a manner that it can actually be foreign powers. It could be also the unification of powers, of nation states, coalitions being formed to counter NATO, such as it was stated in the past 3.5 years by China and Russia and their BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which wrapped up yesterday their meetings. And of course they had solidified their alliance, and 10 member states would even, they seem to be expanding or in the process of expanding from 10 official members to several, as they have observer members and other categories of potential members. But for now, there are 10, of which China, Russia, India, Iran, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan is not in. 4 out of 5 stans are in. I believe Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and the Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and another stan, one of the countries of the which were part of the Soviet Union, but not Turkmenistan. Not Turkmenistan. One of the stans is not in. There's 5 stans, of which there's Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, another stan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan. Turkmenistan is not. It's Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and another stan. Uzbekistan. There it is, Uzbekistan. So it's Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan is not. So one of the 5 stans, which were all 5 countries part of the USSR, one of them is not. In the out of the 5 is not in the SCO, and it's Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan is not part of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And what did they do? They solidified their alliance furthermore. So this is a potential consequence of direct military assistance or action undertaken by NATO in the past and present. For example, as it relates strictly to non-NATO member countries, right? Because this DMAAA, it's only applicable when NATO countries or NATO as a whole assists militarily only, I'm not speaking humanitarian, or takes action in a strictly military manner by providing arms, training, armaments, whatever the case may be. So that is where it is. So there's nothing to do with humanitarian aid, right? Has nothing to do with humanitarian aid thereof. So nothing to do with humanitarian aid. That has to be totally understood thereof. It has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. So the DMAAA, direct military assistance or action, in regards to NATO member countries assisting or taking direct military action vis-a-vis non-NATO basically conflicts, which are between non-NATO member states. For example, Libya, the intervention in Libya, in Yugoslav wars also. It could be that's in the 90s, Yugoslav wars. It could be also in Syria versus the ISIL or Islamic State. It could be Iraq. It could be also Ukraine, the most recent one, and perhaps paradoxically the most dangerous one in many ways, because the consequence has been potentially this SCO, China and Russia solidifying their military alliance, because in Ukraine there's the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, undertaken by NATO member countries, including Canada, not only providing humanitarian aid, but military action, and by not action directly, of course, just to be specific, it's just assistance. So it's either one of the A's, either direct military assistance or action or assistance, or one of those, or both. It could be both assistance and action. In the case of Ukraine, NATO member countries, we provided assistance. Helmets, military gear, drones, even military finance for a military purpose. Money for military purposes such as tanks, armored vehicles, logistic knowledge, military training, helmets, munition, grenades, etc., 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 etc. A military assistance we provided, even Canada, right? And due to this, it has consequences. Perhaps even Russia, along with China and other countries, internally in Canada, supporting transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, which I'm going to get back to. Because think about last year, what happened in the 25th of October, last year, 2025. The RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in the history of the world, Canadian world, domestically. I believe maybe even in the world, that I don't know. But locally in Canada, last year, the RCMP, you can check it on the website, in Surrey, BC, British Columbia, Surrey, Surrey. The RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab. 25th of October 2025, and supposedly the doses of fentanyl which were produced at just that one lab, they could have killed the population of Canada twice over. So 88 million. Imagine, just one lab. What if this transnational criminal syndicate organized group, what if it was also partly funded, in part, by foreign powers, foreign governments, under covert special police internal operation for nefarious activity versus the Canadian population because of the DMAA, direct military assistance or action. And of course, since Taiwan has been provided with some armaments and munition by mainly the US, United States, which is part of NATO, that's what it's assistance, not action, direct military assistance. The DMA there is a point of reference that it has been so. So there has been direct military assistance by a NATO member country, right? Or the whole NATO bloc in part, or several countries together, or one country of NATO, right? So there we have now the formation of regional blocs, right? You follow? Which consequently can take covert action to harm us domestically. So that's why the DMAA it's a point of reference for a working tool, a working reference, the DMAA, very important one. It has to be consulted, and of course there's details. Some of it I cannot divulge, such as when I discuss the total mobile defense theory, because it's made for binationally for Canada, United States, and it's birthed out of when I traverse Canada coast to coast. And the total mobile defense theory, total mobile defense theory. When we add the S, it becomes a system that means that we put it into practice. So I cannot discuss it over much. So I cannot discuss it over much, right? I cannot discuss it too much. The DMAA, the DMAA, there's certain things I cannot discuss, such as I cannot discuss too much online on YouTube the total mobile defense theory. I have to discuss it with NATO member high top ranking officials such as David McGuinty, the head of CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and the head of the RCMP security forces, and of course with the Pam Bondi and Pete Hexet and NORAD NATO specifically, the total mobile defense theory, part of my call for the Operation Northern Scorpion, which are fundamental public-private partnership. Back to the DMAA, alright, direct military assistance or action or assistance. In Ukraine, we provided assistance, not action. NATO troops, NATO forces, NATO planes, Air Force of NATO were not directly involved in bombing. For example, the 4 annexed regions in eastern Ukraine, right? They were not directly involved. But of course, the possibility for action is also on the table, right? As it regards also to the Taiwan question. Now, in relation to the Chinese military parade of China, the 80th anniversary, there wasn't too much mention of Taiwan there, because Taiwan is regarded as integral part of China, and that their conflict also dates back to the Second World War and the Cold War. It's an unresolved conflict. Basically, that was one of my premises back of my conclusion in 2019 in October, when I concluded that there's going to be an international conflagration, was of course that due to unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, especially the Cold War, those conflicts were going to be resolved, which were not resolved, and due to their not having a reconciliation, those conflicts were going to restart in one of the major pillars, the main points of the intellectual academic discussion which we had thereof, was that these conflicts were not fully resolved. So back, of course, in 2019, because my prediction has unfolded in a manner which the geopolitical world is heading now. So that was my prediction, and one of the points of analysis was that the unresolved conflicts of the 20th century, if you look at Russia, Ukraine, it's a 20th century Cold War period which lasted between March 1947 and of course December 1991, that their Cold War period lasted almost 45 years, and that there was unresolved conflicts. And of course these unresolved conflicts are part of where we are now. And of course now we have also the Israel-Hamas post-October 7, right? And that's, Hamas was established in the, Hamas is an organization which is from the 80s, during the Cold War period. China, Taiwan is another one. There's many. There's India, Pakistan. The Kashmir situation is a post-1947 Cold War period conflict. So I predicted in the general manner that these conflicts in the world were going to restart because they were not fully resolved, right? So back to the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, it has consequences. That consequences can be A, B, C, D. The foreign powers with financial elements, commercial elements, and covert secret police espionage to, of course, have direct military assistance or action undertaken here by, of course, the population and the proposition where we are now. The population and the proposition of where we are now, where we are now. So that is, of course, the direct military assistance or action which was undertaken now. And that is, of course, where we are to be now espoused and appellated to get, of course, the information, the awareness of all the consecutive appellation of where we are to strive for the best relations with each other in the NATO member complex, and of course to be internally integrated in the domain where we are now to be conclusive about, and of course to take further action or inaction, of course, is relative to the North American collective civilizational complex of where we are now for the appellation of the time that comes in the future, that we might be best to have some reservation and to put the DMAA, direct military assistance in action, in further evaluation, and not just evaluation, but it's a frame of reference. Okay? It's a frame of reference, and that frame of reference has to be established in the manner which we are consequently involved in a way, shape, or form where we are now to be saluted about, and to see a little bit of that blue tent there, and to be appellative of the norms where we are now involved with, and we are now consequently in the domain of the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, to be consequently, of course, involved in our levels of understanding and layers of the wisdom which the DMAA provides as a theoretical framework and point of reference for future action or inaction or reservation thereof, right? Because it has consequences. So the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, has certain consequences. Those consequences can be X, Y, Z, W, W, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever the formulation is in the consequences where we are now prudently about it, to go round about the domain and the appellation where we are now to be formulated in all the domain plurality where we are to be saluted about, and to have, the consequential representations and the representations of our left and right and in the center, because it's not necessarily left and right affair, centrist affair, either more general integrated point of reference and theoretical framework, the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, which is proudly created by yours truly, financially stressed at the moment, but joyous, happy, content. And in the year of darkness, it's already November 2nd. I know everything to do with satellites, supercomputers, radio stations, and 4G, 5G. I'm on that 6 and 7G in the future. My parallel self lives in the year of darkness, November 2nd, 2029. I build, create microchips, supercomputers, radio stations, telecommunications, and satellites. I live in the year of darkness, November 2nd, 2029. And there I'm also an Asp, also have Asperger's, but in that parallel life I build, create supercomputers, radios, microchips, all things to do with science, technology, which of course you have to get involved. And of course the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, is something where we have, of course, to appellate, and of course we have to do together in our points of reference for further action or inaction, because of the potential consequences, again, which might be even the support by foreign powers, such as, for example, it could be Russia, it could be China, it could be India, it could be, of course, it could be Venezuela, it could be other countries, just saying as examples, not necessarily that it is so, but there's a high possibility, as the RCMP here has proven in the transnational criminal syndicate organized groups and their fiascos in the past of Chinese police stations and internally in Canada and other, of course, foreign influence, covert operations by foreign governments. So we have that foreign government. This is a NATO specific, so it's regarding us as NATO, as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, right? Another conflict which is not part of NATO is Israel-Hamas. Israel is not part of NATO. Israel is not part of NATO. Before October 7, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico to be joining as the 32nd and 33rd. We would have been 33, because now we're 32 member countries of NATO. But of course that has to be understood properly, that possibility of the joining of NATO is of course the possibility for other countries for NATO's expansion, which has been of course a point of contention. So the DMAA, a direct military assistance or action, is the point of reference where we are. Now today I'm just gonna go check out that little blue and white tent. It makes me think of the Quebec flag for some reason. I would vote no in the referendum, but that is a point where we made a great linguistic compromise here in the North American Collective, and we continue to do it. And of course we are part of Canada, and my way to fuse Canada and United States best via the DRT, the Debt Refusion Treaty, is gonna finalize the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action. We're gonna close the chapter on the DMAA. Again, it is a frame of reference, a theory, and it has to do with the possibility, of course, of the NATO member countries to be, to do, and to be, of course, part of the levels where we have the analysis and the theorizing as a frame of reference, as a working tool, whether we have it or not, or whether we continue to have it in the future. And this is quite cool here. What is this? Something where we got a little bit of that beautiful light here. I guess we got some of that going on. Don't pollute, don't pollute. I guess we got some cool, kind of cool. I guess it has a purpose, environmental. I like the lights from afar, so we checked, and gotta be also the lights for a little bit of security, which is good. And here on the mountain, the headquarters, Mount Royal in Hawk Island, HAWK, Montreal, where is the headquarters of our empire. We're going to have to be building it in a super military total security service and defense plateau based on my new Dragon 911, the 911 total protocols for citizen integration, for total security, total service, total defense, total SSD, as we move towards the plateau of a total integration and integrate both the public and the private into the Imperial 63 sphere. My dream, the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, which gonna manifest with lots of dancing, working out fitness, and gonna now discuss the DRT, Debt Refusion Theory, because it is super important for me to discuss the DRT theory parallel to the DMA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, which has consequences, which of course some of those consequences could be that why we have a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups establishing themselves in Canada, and the growing production of fentanyl, which there seems to be something not adding up, that there seems to be a little tempering with the fentanyl, that is actually, more and more I'm classifying it as a bioweapon rather than a drug, because it doesn't make sense. Something doesn't add up, that there's so many casualties of this drug, that it was supposed to make you feel good, and the drug trade is supposed to make a lot of money, and for the drug dealers and the pushers and the drug dealers, but it seems that this fentanyl, it creates so many overdosing, that it seems that fentanyl is not, at least the ones that's being tampered with, from my knowledge, it seems that it's not really a drug, but it is more and more seemingly like a bioweapon. And now I gotta just also go my knees down, of course, a little bit on the knees down, because we are in the darkness on the mistress, and the knees, I'm going down the slope, a slope which is of course like a steep slope, so I have to position myself in a legion type of manner, as in the armies of ancient Egypt and the Sumerian and Persian and Spartan, as I was the priestess Pythia who orated the great Eritrea to Lycurgus, my past lives, previous incarnations. Sometimes it was a man, a woman, and You know, George Patton's poem Through a Glass Darkly, that's where George Patton of course discusses his thesis, his belief in reincarnation. George Patton, the military general of the United States, also believed in reincarnations, and he wrote one of my favorite poems called Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton didn't mention that he was my wife in a past life, as I was his in a past life, so I guess we were both married to each other paradoxically in past lives, previous incarnations, and I was the priestess Pythia who orated the great Rithria to Lycurgus, and that is just something where we have to be doing now. And the great Rithria to Lycurgus, that was my analysis and my past life, previous incarnation, a priestess of ancient Egypt and Legion of Rome, and today Adrian, dragon, androgynous pansexual, founding the dancing goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, I guess. And just like playing that Julius Caesar rainbow, every man's wife and every woman's husband, 50-50, you know. And that's it, black, white, and rainbow, LOVE, the DMAA. I'm not perfect, far from it. Live with my scars, my sexuality. I'm not sexually frustrated, masturbate good, and you know, it's channeling and sublimating aggression. I don't like violence, but I am hyper vigilant. I am very sporty, intense, but I am hyper vigilant. May I be avenged 11-fold, 11-fold, and that's what we got to be doing with that. May I be avenged 11-fold, and that is just something which we have, of course, to be appellating on the circumstantial position where we are, to get doing on that, you know, to get it doing on the appellation side of the things where we are now involved with, you know, and that is some things where we are now to descend the mountain and go back home, because I am hungry on the side, and that is just this hunger and the lust sometimes, and the DMAA gonna be close with that, and that is something which we have, of course, to do. The direct military assistance and action is something where we have, of course, to do now, of course, in the appellational projects where we are now, to be involved in all the dictums and all the circumstantial prudencies of the discussion from transitioning from the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. Keep it in mind for future reference. We're going to discuss now the direct military assistance and action. That is something which, of course, we have to do on the go now and on the go now, and that is something which we have to be doing now for all the prudency side of things where we are now to be involved in, you know. So that is something which we have to be doing, you know. All the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, that is something which we got to be doing today. And we're going to go hydrate over there, and then we're going to discuss the DRT, direct, that we're going to discuss not just the DMAA, we're going to finish the DMAA, we're going to discuss the DRT, direct, the death refusion theory. So we're going to go towards and to the DRT, the death refusion theory, and we're going to, of course, discuss the death refusion theory thereof, therein, and that is just something where we're going to have to do it ourselves to be doing now. And of course, we're going to have to be hydrating here. Thank you, workers, so that yours truly can hydrate. Going to wait a bit of 10 seconds. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is of course the theoretical reference point, of course, for further evaluation where the NATO complex or NATO militaries can take further direct military action or assistance, and the possibilities of the consequences thereof if NATO members or NATO as a bloc decides to intervene in non-NATO aligned. Because, you know, if NATO countries are attacked by outside forces, then Article 5 is invoked, but otherwise there's no philosophical, not necessarily philosophical, but legalistic frame within the NATO framework and the NATO alliance. There's no really, of course, appellation where we are, of course, something which we have, of course, to do. That is something which we have, of course, to do with something where we got to go. Oh yeah, so that is just something which we have to do. And of course, you know, so of course now we're gonna get into the DRT, the debt refusion theory. Super important to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory is of course the theory which is gonna save us, at least in consequential part, from where we are now, economically, socially, politically, mostly to do, you know, every time of course when we have to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory, I have to make a statement that it is of course strictly merely an economic perspective, because now we have four main economic processes where we are, of course, to get going with that, and that is something which we have to do, you know, to get it on the go. So the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, is something which we have, of course, to appellate and, of course, to integrate in all the civilizational aspects, of course, where we are now, to get this point of view where we have, of course, to do with that, you know. So that is just something where we have to be doing together to discuss, you know, the debt refusion theory, you know, the DRT, the debt refusion theory for us, when we have, of course, to be doing now the DRT, the debt refusion theory, of course, is something where we are now to get on that doing, of course, is something where we have to get to implement, of course, because, of course, we have to be doing, and it's this theory which has to be put into action. That means doing and taking action in regards to the DRT. So from the DMAA theory to the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory integrates also inside my theory. The debt refusion theory is integrated monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory, which of course was implemented in the European Union. In the European Union, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, contains the monetary integration theory, which of course is the financial theory which was implemented in the 90s in the European Union. That is the theory point of reference, where of course the monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s. Germany, France, Italy, of course many other countries, they of course destroyed their national currencies. They destroyed their national currencies, and of course the destruction of their national currencies entailed the creation of under national central banks. They don't have national central banks in Europe anymore. Many countries in Europe, not all of Europe, but they destroyed the national central banks and they destroyed the currencies, and they created the ECB as a multinational central bank for the first time, I guess, in history. Maybe some other points in time they were, when nation states were different, but as we have them today in modern world, in the 21st century. The ECB, of course, the ECB, the European Central Bank, functions, of course, as a multinational central bank, and of course, it has to do, of course, with the work involved. That inside my DRT, debt refusion theory, is integrated monetary integration theory. So that being stated and that being put into perspective, now why I say that the DRT, the debt refusion theory, is of course the only solution, or something similar, of course, for the benevolent affluence, of course, of where we find ourselves today. So of course the DRT theory stands for debt refusion theory. We have four problems, you know, four problems which we have. Of course, the four main problems are, of course, in whatever order you enumerate them. One, of course, of the problems is the growing cost of living, the cost of bread, of course, cost of cheese, cost of bacon, cost of whatever other things of the project where we are, of course, is of course the cost of living, you know, is the cost of bread, cost of bacon, cost of cheese, and cost of lettuce, and other costs of eggs, and all the durable goods which we enjoy to eat. They're augmented, they're increasing, and their prices are increasing, right? So the growing cost of living generally, and of course the other price, of course, the growing cost of living is of course something which we have, of course, to do and to appellate. The growing cost of living, parallel to the growing cost of living, is of course something which has to be stated that parallel to the growing cost of living, there's of course an added dimension to the cost of living, which is the growing cost of rents. Now my rent went up. I'm not gonna say, of course, by my rent, of course, where is of course my rent, of course, went up by between $6 and $10. Between $6 and $10. So I'm not going to say exactly by how much by how much my rent went up. By how much my rent went up, I'm not going to divulge, of course, that preposition, I'm not going to divulge that preposition. So that is, of course, the situation where we are, of course. That is something where we are, the situation. So that is just something where it's appellation, of course, to be in. That is just something where we got, So that is just where we are situationally today, of course, that the growing cost of living affects us in many ways, different citizens, different modes, but of course the growing cost of living, the growing cost of rents is also a problem. That, of course, the stagnation of the salaries. So the stagnation of the salaries is also a problem. The salaries are stagnating, right? The stagnation of the salaries, it's also something which are stagnating. The stagnation of the salaries, of course, they're stagnating. That's the stagnation of the salaries, right? The stagnation of the salaries. That's problematic. That's why we have a lot of labor movements now, taking into strike. So the stagnation of the salaries is a factor to consider. Stagnation of the salaries. Of course, the other one is the growing credit card debt, the growing credit card debt, the growing credit card debts. The credit card debts are increasing, so the increasing, of course, of the credit card debt, that is something which, of course, we have to appellate. So, of course, the growing credit card debts, the fact that they're increasing, even now somebody's swiping from Montreal to San Francisco, I bet you now in Montreal somebody's swiping the credit card, going furthermore in debt. So the credit card debt is a problem. Those four, whatever you enumerate them as such, it could be first, second, third, fourth, but it differs from individual to individual, right? So nonetheless, myself being financially stressed, I don't have credit cards myself. I don't have credit card myself, I don't have credit cards myself. I have, of course, I don't have credit cards myself, and that is just something which we have, of course, to do and to get, of course, something which we got to understand, and of course to limit ourselves where we are now in the appellation where we got to be today, focusing on is implementing the DRT, because for both Canada and United States, and of course the situation is similar. The 4, the growing credit card debt, the stagnation of the salaries, the growing cost of living, and the cost of rent increasing. My rent went up, of course, between $6 and $10, whatever. I'm not going to say how much, but I'm not going to complain, because in my case, I believe that it is, of course, justified. Whatever the numbers is, the justification of whatever the credit card is. Credit card debt, I have a credit line of $10,000, but I don't mind being in debt, because if I wouldn't have taken that $10,000, I would have not been able to cross Canada coast to coast, which is the event which, of course, made me come out of my depression and my suicidalness. So I guess in many ways I'm alive, paradoxically, here today, working because, of course, of that specific event in my life. So the DRT integrates monetary integration theory. Right, the MIT, which is the financial theory, which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s, so back in the 90s, that is something which was implemented like that, and that is just something which we are. So, of course, just the DRT, the debt refusion theory, is something which, of course, we have to implement, and we have to categorize in all the situational aspects where we are now. So, of course, now we're going to explain it as simple as I can. So we're going to take but it has to be implemented by nationally, Canada and United States, and of course it's part of what I call the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion of the North American collective, of the world for that matter, and for the fusion of Canada and United States thereof into the Imperial complex, which is going to include the 63 here in Quebec. So that is the DRT, the debt refusion theory. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, we're going to, of course, create, of course, in the single amount, we're going to take all the public and the private debt together. So including my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to take all the public and the private debt. We're going to, of course, create it together, We're going to create it together. So all that public and private debt, we're going to add it together. Consequently, we're going to add it all up. We're going to convert it into US dollars. And, of course, we're going to, of course, add it all up together, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to convert it into US dollars. And we're going to add it all up. We're going to add it with the US dollar U.S. public-private debt and all the money circulation, because it has to be established and incorporated binationally, Canada, United States. So we're going to create a new currency called the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. Universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit is something which we have, going to be having as a new currency, which is going to have the value of the US dollar. So we're going to create the UE, the universal exchange unit, the universal exchange unit. The UE, the UE, the UE, the universal exchange unit. That's going to be added as a new currency by all the public and the private debt, including my $10,000, right? So all the public-private debt is going to add, of course, to this new currency, the public and the private debt. All the public and the private debt together. All of it is going to be, of course, together inside on creation of the UE as a new imperial central bank, which we're going to create a new imperial central bank. So we're going to add it all together with the US. We're going to add it after this creation of the UE. We're going to be putting a 10% maximum. It's not going to be able to be more than 10% maximum interest rate thereafter. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to fuse the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, with the FBI. We're going to do a census, see who's been living in Canada, United States across the 63. We're going to sign the Imperial Perpetual Union Republican Constitution, a new reformulation of the Constitution. We're going to not pledge allegiance like Mark Carney, Uncle Carney did to the King of England and his heirs. What abomination. You pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs, Mark Carney. Our Prime Minister of Canada, think about that. Pledged allegiance, not to the people of Canada, citizens of Canada, but to the King and his heirs. That gotta go. That should have been done with in the 90s. It kind of been in a republic long ago, and it's time to fuse Canada and the United States. We're gonna fuse, not assimilate, not of course annex. We're gonna mass finance healthcare, build the 44 tunnel complexes, of course, in a North American-centric way. We're gonna do, of course, the creation, of course, of the North American Collective Civilisation complex, and that's what we're gonna be doing together. So we're gonna create, of course, all the civilizational complexes, which we're gonna do, and we're gonna get doing with that. So that is just the creation of the UE, and the universal exchange unit. That is something which we're going to have, So that is the consequential, of course, prudence of the DMAA to be, of course, created. And that is something which, of course, we're going to have to create. That is just something which we're going to do, of course, the DMAA, we're going to create it together. So, of course, all the DMAA, we're going to create it together in the consequence, and, of course, we're going to get on the XYZ. So that is something which we're going to have to be doing, of course, something which we're going to have doing together, and that is just something which we're going to have to be doing. So we're going to create, of course, this new currency, and that is just something which we're going to do together, to get consequently in prudence, and that is just something which you can do together to add, of course, to help. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory is something which we have, We could never, that's cold-blooded, this. So the DRT, we're going to, of course, implement the debt refusion theory. We're going to create, of course, the UE. We're going to, of course, get the UE united currency, of course, we're going to fuse Canada, United States into the Imperial Republican complex. We're going to, of course, mass create, of course, this 44 tunnel complexes. We're going to implement, of course, the DRT, the debt refusion theory. We're going to create the UE, U.universal. The UE, U.universal, E.exchange, U.UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. the value, of course, of the US dollar is going to be, of course, the DRT, and that's, of course, something which we're going to do together. So, of course, we're going to create, of course, this new currency, the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, and that is something which we're going to do together, of course, in the consequential prudence where we are, of course, to be doing it. So that UE is going to be, of course, is going to have the value of the US dollar, and that value of the US dollar is going to be created as a value parallel to the United States dollar. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to be the new currency. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. We're not going to be able to have more than 10% thereafter. That's going to be the maximum. We're going to fuse Canada. We're going to create also mass finance fitness, mass finance the not just fitness. We're going to mass finance create the Imperial tourism protocol. When somebody's going to be 16, that person is going to be automatically accorded 4 days every season. So we got 4 seasons in Montreal. Across the 63, we're going to consider 4 seasons. So every equinox, we're going to accord every year every citizen of the empire 4 days. 4 times 4 is 16 days a year, recommended to change states, and across going to be able to visit the different states. So this is going to solidify and establish a strong esprit de corps. And of course, this strong esprit de corps is going to be formulated in a manner, of course, where this is going to be financed, so the accreditation of the empire, mass financing that fitness, mass financing tourism, 4 days times 4 times 4, 16 days a year. All citizens 16 plus are going to be accorded this special privilege, accorded rights special for the empire, for the wellness, for, of course, rehabilitation, joy and pleasure of the imperial force, and of course is going to be consequently created as such, and that's what we're going to do. The imperial protocols and force is going to be estimated, of course, to be in consequence, of course, to whatever the case may be in all the situational aspects where we are now, of course, to appellate and of course to do, and of course to be in the situation where we are now, to open, of course, and to be and to, of course, strategize accordingly, of course, where we are now, to be the proposition where we are, and of course all the situations where we are directed towards indicate towards a financial collapse, economic financial collapse due to the 4 problems. So the DRT comes just in time, and financial collapse could happen tomorrow. There could be a financial collapse, which of course can propel us towards an economic catastrophe. We're saving us from Armageddon. Comes the DRT, debt refusion theory, paradoxically on the table, along with those trillions of kisses. Credit from yours truly, Adrian Hanna, Dragon, Aspie, Aristotelic philosopher, theoreticians of geopolitics and strategic thinker. And this DRT is part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion. And our coming empire will have just like that N of the pi symbol, the N with 2 heads, the N for Norman, natural, neurodivergent Normandy. The N, the pi is the mathematical constant, of course, known for the reference between the ratio between the diameter, the ratio of the circle and the diameter. So it's 3.1416. So thus our empire will have kind of like 2 heads, 2 faces, one for benevolence, one for punishment, one for goodness, kindness, love, and righteousness, the other one for punishment and justice and more severe kinds. So that empire of the 63, we're going to fuse Canada, United States via the DRT, creating the UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE, Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. 10% is going to be maximum. There's not going to be more than that. So more than 10% is not going to be allowed. We're going to build those 44 tunnels. We're going to, of course, mass create the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the integrated Imperial SSD Legion, aka the Dragon Army, for total security, total service, total defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, with the Dancing Goddess Army, the International Integrated Dance Legion, the DGA Dancing Goddess Army, for environmental education and action. Pledge your legions, thou art family, or friends will benefits only. And of course, we're going to build those massive 44 underground subterranean tunnel cities. And of course, those tunnel cities are going to be able to appellate all our dynamics and all our dynamics where we have, of course, now to be saturated of. And of course, that is something where we have to appellate in the conclusion. And of course, all the way where we are now is where we have to implement the DRT theory, part of the bipolar strategy, not to be confused with psychiatry or psychology. Bipolar strictly in my sense of a geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion. Well, that's dangerous right there. I got to be filled. So that's where we are, and with the DRT, the creation of the UE will establish a new world order, fusing Canada, United States, 63 states, super states, into the new Imperial Republic of America, aka the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, for world peace. We're gonna mass finance fitness, mass finance tourism, with food, lodging and transport. 4 days every season, every equinox, 16 and plus, all citizens regardless of XYZ other status, all citizens of the empire. We're going to create a census, see who we can accord amnesty and building those 44. We're going to implement the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act and do a census and see who can help us build those 44 tunnels, and of course set in motion the tourism. And we're going to visit, people are going to visit all the states, right? Because 4 days, that's going to be good for regeneration, rejuvenation, and union, perpetual union of the 63 for our empire. Let it be, let it rise, and together as individual, collective, sovereign citizens for service, security, service, and defense, SSD. That's going to be pledge allegiance, friends with benefits only, and that is basically the DRT, the debt refusion T. We're going to switch to French now because we label bienvenue Québécois et Québécoises, une petite chanson, je fais l'entraînement physique, puis là je me retourne de la